Imagine a warm golden afternoon deep within a quiet ancient forest. The sunlight filters down through a thick emerald canopy, breaking into soft glowing beams that dance slowly upon a mossy floor. The air is perfectly still, fragrant with the rich scent of damp earth and blooming wildflowers. Suddenly, a flicker of iridescent blue catches your eye. A creature of impossible delicacy, seemingly woven from stained glass and morning dew, drifts into the light. It is a morpho butterfly, moving not in a straight line but in a slow rhythmic waltz with the air itself. Each beat of its shimmering wings sends gentle ripples of calm outward, slowing the passage of time. The world around you fades into a soft, hazy blur, leaving only the hypnotic rise and fall of this silent traveller. It lands softly upon a fern, opening and closing its sapphire wings like a slow, deep breath. Breathe in with it, breathe out. As you watch this perfect, fragile miracle, feel the weight of the day slipping softly from your shoulders, dissolving into the cool forest floor. You are safe here. You are completely at peace in this tranquil sanctuary of the mind. As we embark on this journey to explore the hidden, beautiful truths of these winged wonders, you do not need to try to remember. Your subconscious mind is a vast library. It will absorb these 101 truths while you rest. Just let go. Allow the facts to wash over you like a warm, soothing current. There is nothing you need to achieve, nothing you need to hold on to. Let the words become colours behind your closed eyes, painting a dreamscape of velvet wings and endless meadows. Surrender to the rhythm of the journey and allow yourself to drift deeper and deeper into relaxation. We begin our journey by looking closely at how these magnificent creatures experience the physical world around them, a world they perceive in ways entirely gentle and foreign to our own. When a butterfly softly touches down upon the delicate petals of a blossoming flower, it is not merely resting its tired wings, it is tasting the world. Woven into the incredibly fine articulated segments of their tiny legs are highly sensitive chemoreceptors. With every graceful step they take across a dew-kissed leaf or a vibrantly coloured bloom, they are deciphering the complex chemical signature of the plant beneath them. It is as if they are reading a sweet, silent language written in the earth's nectar. They step and they taste the sweetness of the soil, identifying exactly where the most nourishing nectar lies hidden. Imagine experiencing the sweetness of a vast summer meadow simply by walking through it. Every gentle step a subtle burst of flavour and life, guiding them perfectly towards sustenance and comfort. And as they lift off gently from that sweet blossom, their flight seems almost magical, an effortless glide on the breeze. Yet this graceful dance is orchestrated by an intricate, hidden architecture of flight. We often look up and see a pair of wings, a single, unified canvas of colour fluttering by in the sunlight. But this is a beautiful, seamless illusion. A butterfly is carried upon the soft air not by two, but by four distinct wings. The forewings and the hind wings work together in absolute unwavering harmony. They are synchronized so perfectly by tiny invisible mechanisms deep within their thorax that they appear to move as one united surface. This forewing design is a miniature masterpiece of natural engineering, allowing for that characteristic fluttering motion that seems to effortlessly defy gravity. It gives them the serene ability to pivot on a gentle breeze, to hover silently within a sunbeam, and to glide through the quiet air with the grace of a falling autumn leaf. The breathtaking colours painted across these four delicate wings hold their own profound, mesmerising secret. When you admire the shimmering metallic cobalt of a morpho, or the fiery glowing orange of a monarch, you are rarely looking at actual pigment. You are witnessing a masterpiece of structural colour. The wings themselves are entirely transparent, formed from incredibly thin layers of chitin, mirroring the clear delicacy of a dragonfly. But covering these transparent membranes are thousands upon thousands of microscopic scales, arranged meticulously like the overlapping shingles on a miniature fantastical roof. These scales are shaped with microscopic ridges, curves and valleys that catch the ambient light, bending and scattering it into prismatic brilliance. They play endlessly with the sunbeams, reflecting only specific, brilliant wavelengths back to our eyes. The colour is born purely from the physical manipulation of light itself, an endless, shimmering optical illusion that never fades, changing beautifully and softly with every shifting angle of the sun. This creature of light and air sustains itself purely on the liquid essence of the meadow. They have no teeth, no means to bite or chew the heavy world around them. Their existence relies on a diet entirely of sweet, flowing liquids. Hidden neatly and safely tucked beneath their head is a remarkable adaptation, the proboscis. It is a long, highly sensitive, delicate tube, curled up tightly like a microscopic watch spring when not in use. When the butterfly senses a deep well of sugary nectar, this elegant instrument gracefully unfurls, reaching deep down into the hidden heart of a flower. It functions precisely like a slender, perfectly designed drinking straw, drawing up the plant's nectar, fresh water from a muddy puddle, or even the sweet fermenting juice of fallen overripe fruit in an orchard. It is a gentle, sipping existence, taking only what is freely and softly offered by the world, a harmonious, quiet exchange of life and liquid sweetness. While the nectar of flowers provides them with abundant, rushing energy, a butterfly's gentle existence requires more than just the sugar of blooms. They must also seek out the hidden, grounding minerals of the earth. In the quiet, still hours of a sunny morning, you might find a breathtaking, silent congregation of butterflies gathered closely at the edge of a muddy puddle or a damp, shadowed patch of river sand. This beautiful collective gathering is known as mud puddling. It is an instinctual, necessary quest for essential salts, nitrogen, and complex amino acids that the sweet, airy flowers simply cannot provide. The butterflies use their delicate proboscis to gently sip the mineral-rich moisture directly from the soil, drawing up the earth's vital, grounding nutrients. It is a moment of communal stillness, a shimmering, trembling mosaic of wings resting softly against the dark, cool earth, as they patiently gather the inner strength needed for their long, winding journeys ahead. Time itself moves differently for these ethereal beings, stretching and compressing in ways we can scarcely comprehend. For some fragile species, a lifetime is a fleeting, brilliant spark, lasting only a few fleeting days or a couple of gentle sunlit weeks. They emerge from the dark, they dance wildly in the sun, they fulfill their ancient purpose, and they gently pass away, leaving behind a quiet legacy of beauty. But this incredibly brief existence is not the rule for all who bear wings. The magnificent morning cloak butterfly, with its rich velvety brown wings bordered in bright gold and deep azure, knows the slow turning wheel of the seasons. It can live for nearly an entire year, enduring the freezing quiet silence of winter by entering a state of deep, frozen sleep called diapause, hiding safely beneath the loose, warm bark of ancient trees. Their delicate lives are stretched patiently across the harsh snows of winter and the awakening blooms of spring, proving that within this fragile, paper-thin form lies incredible, enduring resilience. This quiet, unspoken resilience has allowed them to carry their beauty to the farthest, most isolated corners of our world. If you were to wander the globe, from the humid, deeply shadowed depths of the Amazon rainforest to the crisp, perfectly clear, thin air of high alpine meadows, you would find these delicate travellers tracing invisible paths in the sky. They have adapted masterfully to almost every environment on Earth, painting the air of 6 distinct continents with their vibrant, shifting hues. Only one landmass remains completely untouched by their gentle wings, the vast, icy, silent expanse of Antarctica. There, the eternal cold and unforgiving winds are simply too harsh for their delicate forms to endure. But everywhere else, in every sunlit valley and every windswept plain across the globe, they have found a welcoming home, weaving themselves deeply and beautifully into the rich tapestry of the global ecosystem. Finding such a home often requires an epic, almost unimaginable journey across the curvature of the earth. We drift our thoughts now to the monarch butterfly, a creature weighing less than a single dime, yet possessing the heart of a relentless, ancient explorer. As the cool chill of autumn begins to whisper through the air in North America, these fragile beings undertake a miraculous, sweeping migration, travelling up to 3,000 miles to find the specific warmth of the mountain forests in central Mexico. They navigate perfectly by reading the angle of the sun and feeling the invisible magnetic pull of the earth, guided by a deeply ingrained map passed down silently through generations. They fly steadily across vast, shining lakes, over towering mountain ranges and across sprawling golden plains, driven by an ancient, quiet calling. It is a multi-generational relay race of endurance, a profound testament to the hidden, unyielding strength contained within such a tiny, fluttering vessel. The journey across vast, changing continents is only matched by the miraculous, solitary journey of transformation they undergo within themselves. The birth of a butterfly is a profound story of complete and utter surrender to change. When a caterpillar forms its chrysalis, it does not simply grow wings upon its back. Inside that hardened, protective emerald shell, the caterpillar's entire body literally dissolves into a nutrient-rich cellular soup. It completely and peacefully lets go of its former earthbound self. Within this biological liquid, tiny, highly specialized groups of cells called imaginal discs survive the dissolution. These discs hold the profound, dormant blueprint of the beautiful butterfly to come. Slowly, in the dark, silent, undisturbed safety of the chrysalis, these cells begin to rebuild. They craft the delicate legs, the intricate faceted eyes, and the magnificent folded wings out of the dissolved essence of what came before. It is the ultimate act of natural renewal, a powerful reminder that the most beautiful soaring transformations require a period of quiet, deep, and trusting rest. When this newly formed creature finally breaks free from its shell and opens its complex, compound eyes to the sunlit world, it sees a landscape we can barely begin to imagine. Our human eyes see a beautiful flower, a wash of soft pink or bright yellow. But a butterfly's vision extends far, far beyond our own narrow spectrum, reaching deeply into the ultraviolet light. To them, the seemingly simple meadow is a glowing, vibrant, complex map of hidden signals. Flowers that appear plain and unmarked to us radiate with intense ultraviolet patterns, displaying intricate bullseyes and glowing runway lines that point directly to the hidden wells of sweet nectar. They see a world painted in secret, luminous, glowing colours, a secret garden entirely invisible to the human eye. As they glide peacefully through the air, they are guided by these glowing ultraviolet beacons, living out their days in a vibrant hidden reality that exists right alongside our own, a world of radiant, invisible, and boundless beauty. The glow of that hidden ultraviolet reality gradually softens, melting gently into the warm, embracing light of the morning sun. To navigate this world, a butterfly must first invite the sun into its very being. They are creatures of warmth, deeply and profoundly tied to the temperature of the air around them. When the dawn breaks, and the forest is still crisp with the deep chill of the fading night, a butterfly cannot simply take to the sky. Their delicate flight muscles, hidden carefully within the centre of their thorax, are asleep, locked in the cold, and so they seek out a quiet, sun-drenched stone or a broad, flat leaf that catches the morning rays. They open their wings wide, laying them perfectly flat to capture every ounce of radiant solar energy. They become tiny, living solar panels, absorbing the golden heat until their internal temperature rises, slowly and miraculously awakening the ancient machinery of flight. It is a beautiful daily ritual of rebirth, a quiet surrender to the light, waiting perfectly still until the warmth grants them permission to dance once more. The soft texture of this golden light leads us deeper into the hushed shadows of the rainforest, where light itself is captured and held in a different, even more miraculous way. Here, in the dappled emerald gloom, we find a creature that has mastered the gentle art of vanishing. The glasswing butterfly wears no brilliant tapestry of structural colour. Instead, the delicate panes of its wings are entirely clear, perfectly transparent windows into the forest behind them. The microscopic scales that paint other species have been shed over millennia, leaving only the thin, resilient membrane, framed softly in borders of opaque brown or delicate rust. As they drift slowly through the humid air, they are like flying whispers of glass, practically invisible to the passing world. They do not hide by trying to blend into a specific leaf or a piece of bark. They hide by becoming the forest itself. Through their gossamer wings you can see the deep greens of ancient ferns, the bright fleeting flash of a passing macaw, the slow, heavy drip of a raindrop. They teach us the profound beauty of transparency, of letting the world shine softly through you without resistance, moving through life leaving no shadow behind. While the glasswing drinks the ambient light, other gentle winged wanderers seek their moisture from the most unexpected and tender of fountains. Deep in the heart of the Amazon, where the heavy air hums with the thrum of life, the muddy riverbanks host a quiet, incredibly poignant exchange. Yellow-spotted river turtles haul their heavy ancient shells out of the dark water to rest upon the sun-baked logs, and as they bask in the heat, their eyes naturally water, shedding slow, silent tears to clear away the salt. Drawn to the essential minerals suspended in these drops, delicate Julia butterflies gather in trembling, brilliant clouds of orange. They alight with impossibly soft precision upon the turtle's weathered ancient face, carefully unfurling their proboscis to gently sip the tears. The turtle remains perfectly still, patient and entirely undisturbed by the fluttering kiss of these bright blossoms. It is a breathtaking moment of profound, unlikely harmony between the heavy, armoured ancient reptile and the weightless, ephemeral insect, a silent sharing of the earth's quiet sorrows and vital sustenance. And as this knowledge settles deep within you, your breathing slows. You can feel the quiet rhythm of the forest becoming your own rhythm. The rise and fall of your chest echoes the slow opening and closing of velvet wings. You're drifting gracefully on a current of calm, sinking deeper into a space where only peace remains. Echoing this peaceful silence is the invisible language of scent, carried upon the softest, coolest breezes of the twilight. Though they possess no nose as we understand it, butterflies and their nocturnal moth cousins are absolute masters of the olfactory realm. Their antennae, those delicate wands extending gracefully from their heads, are heavily adorned with thousands of microscopic receptors. These are incredibly precise chemical decoders, capable of detecting a single, isolated molecule of scent drifting through a vast, empty cubic mile of cool air. When a female rests upon a distant, hidden leaf and releases her pheromones, a subtle, sweet perfume of longing, the male's clubbed antennae snatch this invisible thread from the wind. He does not need to see her. He follows the shape of the scent, flying upwind through the darkening purple sky, drawn by an irresistible, invisible tether. It is a slow romance written entirely in chemistry, a silent serenade sung in the ancient language of the atmosphere. The fading purple light of this scented dusk reminds us that even the most tireless dancers must eventually find their rest. As the sun dips entirely below the horizon and the cool night air begins to settle over the meadow, a butterfly's world slows to a complete halt. They do not have warm nests or hidden burrows to retreat into. Instead, they must find a safe haven entirely out in the open air. They seek out the protective overhang of a broad, sturdy leaf, or slip deep within a dense, shielding cluster of tall meadow grass. There, they hang themselves upside down, clinging tightly with their tiny hooked feet. They close their wings securely together, hiding their brilliant upper colours and exposing only the camouflaged, muted, earthy tones of their undersides. This inverted posture is a brilliant, quiet defence. It allows the heavy, cold dew of the night to condense and roll harmlessly off their wings, preventing them from becoming waterlogged and frozen in the dark. Hanging in the quiet night, they become perfectly still, invisible fragments of the shadows waiting patiently for the dawn to kiss them awake once more. From the quiet sanctuary of the undersurface, we turn to the very fabric that blankets them, the microscopic architecture of their silence. We know their wings are shingled with scales that bend the light, but these scales are, in their most ancient evolutionary origin, simply modified hairs. Over millions of slow, unfolding years, these simple sensory hairs flattened, widened, and developed their microscopic ridges to become the vibrant, dust-like coating we marvel at today. But for some species, these beautiful wings are not just visual canvases, they are vast, sensitive acoustic receivers. Some butterflies, particularly those dwelling in the shadowy understory of dense woods, possess swollen, highly specialized veins at the very base of their forewings. These modified veins act as tiny, delicate ears, incredibly sensitive to the low-frequency thrumming of approaching birds or the deep, shifting hum of the forest. They actually feel the sound vibrating softly through the very membrane of their flight, listening to the world through the sweeping canvas of their own delicate bodies. Let this deep, ancient stillness wash over you now. Feel the comfortable weight of your body sinking into the surface beneath you, completely supported, completely safe. Just as the butterfly trusts the leaf to hold it through the long night, you can trust this moment to hold you. Your mind is quiet. Your body is beautifully at rest. The gentle vibration of that ancient forest floor leads us down to a hidden, miraculous alliance playing out among the twisting roots and the damp clover. Long before it takes to the spacious sky, while it is still a slow-moving, earthbound caterpillar, certain species engage in a brilliant melodic diplomacy. They are soft, highly vulnerable, and rich in nutrients, a perfect meal for passing predators. To survive this fragile stage, they hire a fierce armoured bodyguard, the ant. But how does a completely soft caterpillar speak to an armoured ant? It sings to them. Using specialised microscopic organs, the caterpillar rubs tiny segments of its body together, producing a faint rhythmic acoustic signal that perfectly mimics the royal sound of an ant queen. The ants, utterly enchanted by this noble vibration, surround the caterpillar, guarding it fiercely with their lives. In gentle return, the caterpillar secretes a sweet, specialized nectar from a tiny gland on its back, a sugary, golden payment for its devoted protectors. It is a whispered lullaby of survival, a beautiful, hidden symphony of cooperation playing softly in the tall grass. The rhythm of this microscopic song pulses like a tiny heartbeat. Yet, if we look closely at this creature, we find no lungs to draw the breath that fuels it. Butterflies do not breathe through a mouth, nor do they possess the heavy, expanding and contracting lungs of a mammal. Their breath is a completely passive, gentle exchange of air, moving seamlessly through their fragile outer shell. Running along the sides of their slender bodies, neatly arranged like a row of tiny hidden portholes on a miniature ship, are small openings called spiracles. These are the silent doorways for the air. Oxygen drifts softly into these spiracles, travelling down a complex branching network of incredibly fine silvery tubes that deliver the life-giving gas directly to every individual cell in their body. It is a perfectly balanced system of breathing that requires no forceful heaving, no muscular chest to rise and fall in the dark. It is as if they simply allow the atmosphere to permeate them, breathing in the world with zero effort, existing in a perfect, quiet communion with the air itself. This effortless, silent breath fills forms of astounding variety, shifting seamlessly from the impossibly small to the breathtakingly grand. In the remote, deeply humid rainforests of Papua New Guinea, the thick air is parted by a true giant. The Queen Alexandra's birdwing is the largest butterfly on Earth, a soaring titan of the canopy. The females are magnificent, towering figures with sweeping wingspans that can stretch up to an astonishing 11 inches across. When they fly, their movement is not a frantic, hurried flutter, but a slow, incredibly powerful sweeping glide, resembling the majestic floating flight of a small hawk. Their wide wings are painted in deep, rich chocolates and creamy whites, while the slightly smaller males flash with brilliant metallic teals and electric golds. They remain high in the ancient treetops, sipping sweet nectar from orchids that bloom closer to the sun than the earth. To see one drift slowly overhead is to witness a flying shadow, a living, breathing kite woven from velvet and emerald, reigning silently over the dense green cathedral below. And as you picture these massive velvet wings gliding slowly through the warm canopy, your own thoughts begin to glide, drifting smoothly, without effort, without direction. You're enveloped in a cocoon of absolute comfort. Every muscle in your face completely relaxes, your jaw softens. You're sinking beautifully into the deep velvet night. The slow, sweeping shadows of those giant wings carry us finally to the deepest, most profound mystery of their inner world, the persistence of memory across the threshold of complete transformation. We know that within the hard shell of the chrysalis, the caterpillar dissolves entirely, breaking down into a liquid soup of raw potential before miraculously rebuilding itself into a creature of the open sky. But incredibly, science has discovered that the butterfly remembers the quiet lessons it learned while it crawled upon the earth. If a caterpillar is gently taught to associate a specific, mild odour with a perfectly harmless but surprising sensation, it will learn to avoid that scent. Astonishingly, when that same caterpillar dissolves, transforms, and emerges weeks later as a completely new winged being it still remembers, the adult butterfly will actively flutter away from that very same odour. It means that the delicate, invisible wiring of memory somehow survives the profound, watery chaos of metamorphosis. The mind of the slow, grounded wanderer lives on, silently folded within the brilliant, airy dancer. It is a beautiful, comforting promise that no matter how drastically we change, no matter how completely we transform ourselves over time, the core of who we are, the vital essence of our memories and experiences remains intact, safely and softly preserved within the beautiful new wings we grow. The preservation of this inner essence, this quiet, enduring memory held safe within the new body, beats to a rhythm entirely its own, far removed from the heavy, rushing pulse of our own human chests. A butterfly does not possess a chambered drum of a heart, nor does it carry the deep crimson blood that rushes through our veins. Instead, their life force is moved by a delicate, elongated, pulsing tube that runs the entire fragile length of their back, just beneath the surface of their exoskeleton. This long, slender vessel slowly undulates, pumping a clear, sometimes pale green or yellowish liquid known as hemolymph. There are no confined, restrictive veins or arteries weaving through their delicate tissues. This fluid simply washes freely through the open hollows of their body, gently bathing their internal organs in a cool, nourishing tide. It is a slow, oceanic rhythm, a peaceful, internal sea that ebbs and flows with the quiet grace of a creature completely at one with the gentle tempo of the natural world. The gentle internal warmth of this flowing sea constantly seeks the touch of the external sun, a relationship built on the beautiful geometry of shadows and light. We have seen them open their wings flat like velvet solar panels, but the sun's warmth can be captured through even more subtle, brilliant angles. In the cooler, slanting light of an autumn afternoon, some delicate species, like the bright sulphur-yellow wanderers of the meadows, practice an art known as lateral basking. They do not open their wings. Instead, they keep them tightly, safely closed, and they tilt their entire fragile bodies sideways. They align themselves perfectly, perpendicular to the sun's rays, turning their broad, flat profile into a magnificent sail designed to catch the radiant heat. By shifting their angle by mere fractions of a millimeter, they perfectly regulate the absorption of the sun's quiet fire. They cast long, sharp, elongated shadows upon the dry dust, becoming tiny, living sundials, waiting patiently for the exact, perfect temperature to release them back into the sky. And within that warm, golden dust where their shadows fall, we find a profound lesson in letting go. For survival in this fragile form sometimes means leaving a piece of your very beauty behind. The microscopic scales that paint their wings with such breathtaking colour are not fused firmly to the membrane beneath. They're attached by the absolute frailest of microscopic pegs, resting lightly like a dusting of fine, colourful powder upon a pane of glass. This extreme, almost impossible fragility is not a weakness, but a brilliant, silent defence mechanism. If a butterfly, distracted by the scent of a blossom, accidentally brushes against the sticky, invisible, silken thread of a spider's web, it does not become hopelessly trapped. The scales themselves simply detach. They slip away without resistance, leaving behind a faint, colourful ghost of their presence glued to the spider's silk. The butterfly flutters off into the breeze, completely unharmed, sacrificing a tiny fraction of its dust to buy the priceless gift of its continued life. And as you visualize this effortless release, you too can practice this gentle shedding. Notice the small, sticky threads of worry or tension that may have attached themselves to your mind today. Just like those microscopic scales, you can simply let them slip away, detach from them without effort, leaving them behind as you drift forward into a deeper, heavier peace. You are safe. You are untouchable here. The shedding of this colourful dust echoes the profound, hidden stillness of their earlier life, a stillness that absolutely masters the intricate art of illusion. Before it possesses wings to flee, a transforming butterfly hanging in its chrysalis is completely immobile, completely vulnerable to the watchful eyes of the forest. And so, the chrysalis itself becomes a masterpiece of deception. Many do not look like living things at all. They are miraculously sculpted by nature to perfectly mimic a dried, curling dead leaf, complete with faux, raised veins and tiny simulated spots of decay and fungus. Others, like the iconic monarch, hang like smooth jade-green jewels, adorned with a magnificent crown of pure metallic gold spots. These spots are not pigment, but microscopic curved mirrors. They catch the dappled light and the surrounding colours of the forest, breaking up the solid silhouette of the pupa. It shatters their outline into fragments of reflected leaves and sky, allowing the sleeping creature to vanish completely into the shimmering canopy of the woods. This mastery of illusion, carried so beautifully in the quiet darkness of transformation, is mirrored just as powerfully in the broad, revealing light of day. In the dim, deeply shadowed, and incredibly humid understory of the tropical rainforests, survival requires a different kind of mask. Here, the magnificent owl butterfly rests heavily upon the rough mossy bark of ancient mahogany trees. When its massive wings are folded securely closed, painted in rich velvety chocolates, warm creams and deep ashen charcoals, a shocking image is revealed. On the underside of each hindwing is a perfect, staring, enormous eye. These spots are complete with a dark pupil, an amber iris, and even a white fleck that perfectly simulates the glint of sunlight on a wet, living eyeball. They mimic the unblinking gaze of a much larger, dangerous predator, like a small owl or a tree frog. When a curious bird approaches, a sudden, slight movement flashes these false, intimidating eyes, creating a powerful, silent shockwave of hesitation, granting the delicate butterfly a precious, fleeting second to melt back into the protective gloom. The illusion of the large, watchful eye is only one mask worn in this silent, endless theatre of the canopy. The tiny, jewel-like hair-streak butterfly, no larger than a thumbnail, wears an incredibly complex false head at the very back of its delicate wings. Slender, hair-like tails extend gracefully downward, swaying lightly in the breeze to perfectly mimic the movement of antennae. Intricate, brightly coloured spots positioned just above these tails mimic tiny, dark eyes. When this little wanderer lands upon a sunlit leaf, it immediately begins a subtle, rhythmic dance, gently rubbing its hind wings together. This movement perfectly animates the false head, drawing all attention to the completely wrong end of its body. When a predator, fooled by this elegant misdirection, strikes at the movement, it tears away only a harmless, fragile piece of wing membrane. The true butterfly, startled but entirely safe, instantly escapes in the opposite direction, leaving its attacker holding nothing but a mouthful of illusion. Notice how your mind beautifully accepts these gentle truths, these quiet stories of survival, without any effort at all. Your thoughts are drifting comfortably, mimicking that slow, safe flight away from the noise and the demands of the waking day. Let the illusions of the day fade away, carrying you deeper and deeper into the quiet, authentic calm of this moment. This solitary escape, this endless game of hide and seek, eventually seeks the deep, grounding comfort of the gathering dusk. While the vast majority of these winged wanderers hide alone in the heavy dew of the night, a striking exception exists in the warm southern forests. The elegant zebra longwing, painted in bold, striking stripes of deep, velvety black and pale, buttery yellow, actively seeks out the comforting presence of its kin as the evening light begins to fade. They do not sleep alone. They gather nightly in large, quiet, communal roosts, often returning to the exact same familiar branch evening after evening. They form a trembling, beautifully striped chandelier of living velvet, sometimes dozens of individuals hanging closely together. In this silent brotherhood of sleep, they share the ambient warmth, their combined, bold warning colours serving as a powerful, unified deterrent to any creature hunting in the dark. It is a beautiful display of quiet solidarity, resting deeply together until the morning sun calls them to separate once more. This deep, silent connection found in the shadows of the dark is born from a vibrant, wildly energetic and entirely invisible language spoken fiercely in the brilliant light of day. We know they can see the hidden, glowing paths laid out upon the petals of flowers, but they also read this luminous, secret language upon the wings of each other. The males of many species possess highly specialized patches of scales that are capable of absorbing and fiercely reflecting ultraviolet light in brilliant, pulsing flashes, completely invisible to our limited human eyes. Their courtship is not merely a physical fluttering, it is an intricate, glowing, aerial dance, a completely private, intensely bright light show. The male flashes his ultraviolet mirrors, communicating his immense vitality, his inner strength, and his perfect, radiant symmetry. To a female watching this display, he is not just a butterfly. He is a pulsing beacon of pure, radiant light against the sky, wooing her with a colour we can never truly perceive. The quiet culmination of this radiant, invisible dance is a profound, incredibly sturdy, microscopic anchor to the physical world. When the female finally alights after her aerial courtship to lay her tiny, beautifully pearlescent eggs, she does not simply drop them carelessly to the earth below. She meticulously secretes a highly specialized, incredibly strong botanical glue from her abdomen, bonding each individual ribbed egg perfectly and securely to the rough underside of a specific chosen leaf. This natural, fast-drying adhesive is a miracle of biological chemistry. It is completely impervious to the heavy, torrential, tearing rains of summer, and it holds fiercely against the violently whipping winds of a sudden storm. It is an act of profound, instinctive care, ensuring that her fragile, microscopic future remains tightly and safely tethered to its designated source of nourishment, anchored securely against the chaotic forces of the vast turning world. And while the green veined leaves of the forest nourish almost the entirety of this winged family, the vast, endlessly complex tapestry of nature weaves exceptions of beautiful, startling strangeness. Deep within the dappled, shifting shadows of North American woodlands, there flutters a small, unassuming, copper-hued anomaly known as the harvester butterfly. This delicate creature does not sip the sweet, fragrant nectar of bright blossoms. In a striking subversion of everything we expect, it is the only truly carnivorous butterfly on its continent. Its tiny caterpillars do not eat leaves. They live hidden among dense colonies of woolly aphids, consuming the small insects to fuel their transformation. The delicate adults, in turn, do not seek flowers. They drink the sweet, sticky honeydew droplets secreted by these very same aphids, gently tapping the insects with their antennae to encourage the flow. It is a quiet, fascinating twist in the story of the meadow. A gentle reminder that the natural world is full of endless, quiet surprises, shifting and adapting in ways that continuously invite our wonder and our deepest, most peaceful contemplation. The texture of this quiet wonder carries us gently from the warm, humming woodlands up into the thin, crisp, crystal-clear air of the highest, most ancient mountain peaks. Here, where the oxygen is delightfully scarce and the nights are eternally deeply freezing, the magnificent Apollo butterfly completely defies the biting chill. While its delicate, vibrant cousins dance lazily in the balmy, heavy air of the lowland tropics, the Apollo navigates the jagged, snow-capped altitudes with an ancient, profound grace. To survive this harsh, blindingly white realm, its body is draped in incredibly dense, dark, hair-like covering, a luxurious, insulating coat that acts perfectly to capture and hold the absolute faintest rays of the weak alpine sun. Its wings, parchment pale and marked with striking brilliant blood-red rings, possess a secret translucent quality that beautifully traps the ambient warmth directly against its thorax. When the bitter, freezing wind howls across the ancient glaciers, it simply flattens itself completely against the frozen, unmoving granite rock, becoming a perfectly still, breathtaking emblem of endurance, living peacefully and quietly at the very edge of the open sky. And while the stone beneath it is cold, silent and inanimate, the butterfly itself is a beautifully flowing, pulsing map of hidden rivers. We often imagine their delicate wings as dry, lifeless canvas, much like the fallen, brittle leaves of autumn, but they are brilliantly, intricately, and beautifully alive. Running flawlessly through the fragile membranes are complex, sweeping networks of hollow, tubular veins. These are not merely rigid structural supports to hold the wing flat. They are living, breathing aqueducts. Through these delicate, microscopic channels flows the hemolymph, carrying vital, life-giving hydration, essential hormones, and healing, repairing cells to the absolute farthest edges of their wings. It is a slow, branching, beautiful delta of life, pulsing gently and rhythmically with every single beat of their effortless flight. Even in the seemingly dry, papery expanse of their breathtaking beauty, there is a continuous rhythmic flow of vitality, a silent, internal, nourishing tide that supports their every graceful movement. The perfect mirrored symmetry of these living rivers occasionally yields to the most profound, breathtaking and beautifully rare miracles of the natural world. In the absolute rarest of fleeting moments, the invisible, dividing line between male and female is painted directly, flawlessly, down the very centre of a single, fluttering creature. This astonishing, deeply fascinating phenomenon creates a being of pure, beautifully split duality. One exact half of its delicate body, one single feathery antenna, one complete set of wings, will bear the vibrant, impossibly bold colours and the slightly smaller frame of the male, while the exact, perfectly mirrored opposite side unfolds with the softer, wider, subtly patterned, beautifully camouflaged canvas of the female. They are two distinct, beautiful, harmonizing songs sung perfectly by a single silent voice, a flawlessly balanced harmony of absolute opposites, drifting softly through the heavy air as a living, breathing testament to the endless, mysterious, and beautiful possibilities woven deeply into the fabric of life. And as you observe this perfect, peaceful balance, your own body effortlessly finds its perfect, deep equilibrium. The heavy, lingering tension of the waking day is melting softly away, slipping smoothly down into the grounding earth below you, leaving you feeling entirely centered, entirely, beautifully whole. Your breath has become a slow, steady, comforting tide, drawing in and softly releasing out, perfectly balanced, perfectly, deeply at peace. Drifting softly on this balanced internal tide, we gently witness the quiet, profound, and beautiful generosity of their union. When a male and female finally meet in the warm, fading golden light of the late afternoon, their silent courtship culminates in the passing of a vital, completely unseen treasure. The male does not simply pass along the microscopic, invisible code of his ancient lineage. He generously offers a precious, hard-won and vital offering known as a nuptial gift. It is an incredibly rich, carefully and patiently gathered package of essential, grounding salts, complex, life-giving proteins, and vital, sustaining nutrients that he has painstakingly collected sip by sip from the damp earth and the cool morning dew. This incredibly nutrient-rich gift is seamlessly absorbed by the female, instantly providing her with a sudden, powerful, and deeply sustaining surge of energy and longevity. It is a profound, beautiful, instinctual sacrifice, an act of deep, quiet, natural provision, perfectly ensuring that the fragile mother of the next generation has the absolute strength to carry their shared, beautiful legacy forward into the bright sunlit world. This glowing, beautiful gift of life is eventually perfectly channeled into the absolute most fragile, microscopic, and incredibly detailed vessels imaginable, the eggs. We have already seen how these tiny, beautifully pearlescent spheres are glued so firmly to the swaying leaves, but their outer structure is far, far more complex than a simple, smooth, featureless bead. At the very top, the absolute zenith of each meticulously, flawlessly sculpted egg, there lies a microscopic, breathtaking masterpiece of natural design. It is an incredibly small, delicately and perfectly arranged rosette, a tiny microscopic funnel shaped precisely and beautifully like a fully blossoming flower. This hidden, deeply floral doorway is the absolute only point where the spark of life can enter the hard, protective shell. It is a beautifully profound, deeply poetic design. A perfect microscopic flower resting silently upon an egg, waiting patiently to bloom into a beautiful winged creature that will, in turn, spend its entire sunlit life seeking out the vibrant, sweet flowers of the world. It is a perfect, unbroken, endless circle of botanical and biological grace. The quiet, microscopic grace of that floral doorway leads us eventually softly to another vital, incredibly strong connection point, spun directly from the very body of the transforming, resting traveller. When the slow, heavy caterpillar finally reaches the end of its long, earthbound, leaf-eating journey, it must secure itself entirely, completely, before entering the deep, profound sleep of the chrysalis. It absolutely does not rely on gravity or mere chance. Using a highly specialized, incredibly intricate spinneret located just near its mouth, it meticulously, patiently weaves a tiny, incredibly dense, unyielding button of pure, strong silk directly against the rough surface of a chosen branch. This small, beautifully silken anchor is known as the cremaster. The caterpillar then slowly, deliberately turns, embedding a specialized, highly complex array of microscopic hooks at the very end of its soft abdomen directly and firmly into this silken pad. It is a permanent, entirely unbreakable tether to the physical waking world. A perfectly safe, profoundly secure anchor, holding them absolutely steady while they let go entirely, dissolving completely into the dark, mysterious, beautiful unknown of their own profound becoming. Feel how perfectly securely you're held in this very moment. Just like that tiny, unyielding, silken anchor, the softness beneath you supports you completely, without question. You absolutely do not need to hold yourself up anymore. You can let go of all remaining effort, sink deeply, beautifully into the immense comfort of the gathering shadows, knowing with absolute certainty that you are perfectly safe, perfectly, entirely held as you peacefully rest. Embracing these comforting deep shadows, we softly follow the elegant trailing silhouettes of the night flyers and the silent twilight dancers. Many magnificent grand species are beautifully adorned with incredibly long, delicate, sweeping extensions on their hind wings, trailing softly behind them like elegant, silken, weightless ribbons. For many long centuries, these tails were thought to be purely, simply, ornamental, a beautiful, unnecessary flourish of nature's endless brush. But in the dim, fading light, they serve a brilliant, utterly life-saving and deeply complex purpose. As they flutter softly through the darkening dusk, these twisting, fluttering tails create spinning, chaotic, invisible vortices of air, and far more importantly, they beautifully reflect the high-frequency, invisible sonar clicks of hunting bats in completely confusing, scattered, chaotic patterns. The tails create a brilliant acoustic illusion, a false, phantom target trailing just slightly behind the butterfly's true, vital body. When a predator strikes fiercely in the deep dark, it catches only the fragile, easily torn, trailing ribbon, allowing the beautiful, silent dancer to escape completely unnoticed into the vast, welcoming night. The incredibly clever, life-saving illusions woven directly into their fragile wings are sometimes painted with an almost surreal, deeply mathematical and breathtaking precision. In the lush, incredibly humid, deeply shadowed heart of the South American rainforests, there lives a small, beautiful creature that appears to bear a completely deliberate, recognizable numerical stamp from the Creator. The striking Diethria family of butterflies, when resting perfectly still with their wings quietly, firmly folded, displays an absolutely mesmerizing, highly intricate pattern of concentric, flawless black and white lines. And perfectly situated right in the very center of the hind wing, these lines perfectly, flawlessly, and undeniably form the number 88. It is an absolute breathtaking masterpiece of natural random symmetry, a beautiful alignment of protective, startling patterns that our complex human minds instantly, deeply recognize. It is a gentle, fascinating, quiet reminder of how the wild, untamed, seemingly chaotic beauty of the ancient jungle can occasionally surprisingly organize itself into shapes of striking, deeply comforting, and familiar order. This familiar, comforting order dissolves slowly back into the beautiful, strange, endlessly fascinating wildness when we return softly to the slow, heavy, muddy banks of the tropical rivers. We have already seen them drink the gentle, quiet tears of resting turtles, but their endless thirst for vital, grounding salts leads them to even more formidable, ancient, and terrifying companions. Along the slow-moving, intensely humid waters of the deep Amazon, the heavy, heavily armoured, deeply toothed caimans bask silently in the intense afternoon heat. And precisely as they do with the gentle turtles, incredibly delicate, vibrantly bright butterflies will descend in fluttering, absolutely fearless, shimmering clouds, landing incredibly softly upon the rough, ancient ridges of the supreme, deadly predators face. They gently, carefully unfurl their delicate proboscis to safely sip the vital moisture directly from the caiman's unblinking cold eyes. The massive, dangerous reptile remains completely motionless, locked in a state of deep, sun-drenched, heavy lethargy, while the incredibly fragile, completely weightless insects peacefully find their deep sustenance in its very gaze. It is a stunning, deeply silent, almost impossible portrait of absolute contrasting power and the most extreme, gentle delicacy. And as they peacefully journey from the dangerous eyes of predators to the absolute highest, freezing alpine peaks, from the deepest, darkest jungles to the wide, bright, open meadows, their incredibly fragile bodies slowly, beautifully record the quiet, profound history of their long lives. A butterfly absolutely does not age as we do. It does not wrinkle, it does not slowly grey. Instead, its incredibly long, arduous journey is mapped permanently upon its wings. As the long weeks softly pass, the brilliant, iridescent, fragile scales slowly rub gently away, gradually revealing the completely clear, resilient, quiet membrane beneath. The crisp, absolutely perfect edges of their wings become softly, beautifully frayed, slightly chipped by the harsh, biting winds, the grazing, near-miss strikes of birds, and the endless, gentle brush of thorns and ancient leaves. Yet, even in their beautifully tattered, deeply faded state, they continue to fly with the exact same profound grace, the exact same quiet, enduring dignity. They are beautifully seasoned travellers, bearing the honest marks of a life fully, entirely lived in the open air, slowly and peacefully becoming more and more transparent, until they finally, gently and beautifully merge completely back into the wind itself. The fading of that delicately frayed wing into the soft turning wind carries us gently, slowly down, moving away from the airy, brightly lit heights, descending deeply into the rich, damp and heavy floor of the ancient oak forest. In the absolute highest, sun-drenched canopies of the oldest, most ancient woods, the magnificent purple emperor reigns in a state of absolute, isolated splendour. It is a true creature of the highest, whispering leaves, painted in a violet so impossibly deep and rich, it seems to capture the very essence of the twilight itself. Yet, the profound, ancient alchemy of its life requires it to occasionally beautifully abandon the golden soaring light of the treetops. It descends gracefully, silently through the layers of the forest, entering the cool, deeply shaded, hushed understory. It is drawn downward not by the sweet, light perfume of blooming meadow flowers, but by the rich, decaying, ancient minerals of the dark, wet earth. It seeks out fallen, heavily overripe fruit, the dark, mineral-rich mud left behind by a gentle rain, and the quiet, softly decaying remnants of the forest floor. It is a beautiful, deeply grounding reminder that even the most soaring, magnificent royalty of the canopy must occasionally bow down, touching the earth to receive the deep, silent, nourishing wisdom of the dark soil. The incredibly rich, deep, earthy scent of the forest floor drifts slowly upward, dissolving peacefully into a vast, breathtaking and endless mosaic of scattered light. When we look upon the world, our human vision is a single, narrow, focused beam, capturing only the small fragment of reality that lies directly before us. But the delicate butterfly observes the unfolding, magnificent universe through an entirely different, infinitely more expansive and peaceful lens. Their large, beautifully rounded eyes are compound, a miraculous structure composed of up to 12,000 individual microscopic, perfectly formed lenses known as ommatidia. Each tiny, flawlessly hexagonal facet captures a single glowing pixel of the surrounding world, weaving them seamlessly together into an immense, unbroken 360-degree tapestry of light, shadow, and motion. They absolutely do not need to turn their delicate heads to see the soft approaching shadow of a passing cloud behind them, or the sudden, bright, silent bloom of a wildflower at their side. They exist constantly in a peaceful, unhurried state of total, absolute awareness, bathed entirely in a spherical, endless panorama of shimmering, gentle colour. And as you begin to imagine this endless, spherical, softly glowing field of light, notice how your own quiet awareness begins to gently expand, pushing softly, easily past the rigid boundaries of your waking mind. You're completely, perfectly enveloped in a soft, glowing, deeply protective sphere of absolute calm. Your breathing is slow, so incredibly deep. Your body is completely, beautifully heavy, sinking safely and perfectly into the very center of your own peaceful awareness. The sweet, heavy, comforting warmth of this total awareness flows smoothly, like golden honey, into the lazy, stretching afternoons of late fading summer. As the vibrant, rushing, frantic energy of the bright season begins to slow and beautifully decay, the sweet, heavy, water-laden fruits of the ancient orchard fall softly into the tall, drying, golden grass. Here, in the quiet, dappled shade of the lower branches, the fruit slowly, peacefully begins to ferment, returning its deeply stored sugars back to the hungry earth. Butterflies, particularly the incredibly resilient wanderers preparing for their long, arduous, wind-blown autumn journeys, are drawn completely and irresistibly to this rich, sweet, intoxicating perfume. They gather in quiet, intensely focused, silent groups upon the split, bruised skin of a fallen plum or a deeply softening brown pear, gently uncoiling their delicate proboscises to drink deeply of the fermenting alcoholic nectar. As they slowly sip the warm, fermented juice, their usually crisp, precise, rapid movements become delightfully, wonderfully slow, beautifully and completely languid. They become gently intoxicated, their wings opening and closing with a heavy, deeply relaxed, perfectly unhurried rhythm, surrendering completely to the rich, intoxicating, heavy bounty of the fading, peaceful season. This incredibly heavy, deeply languid, pulsing rhythm of the late summer afternoon stands in beautiful, startling, and magnificent contrast to the hidden, blurred, rapid energy pulsing in the very center of the sunlit meadow. While the large, heavily velvet-winged giants glide slowly, almost motionlessly through the thick canopy, the small, incredibly sturdy family of butterflies known intimately as skippers dance to a completely different, impossibly rapid metronome. Their tiny, heavily muscled, tightly compacted bodies are brilliantly designed for absolute, astonishing microscopic velocity. They possess the unbelievable ability to beat their miniature, sharp, triangular wings up to 20 times in a single, fleeting, invisible second. To our slow, heavy human eyes, their flight is not a gentle, meandering flutter, but a sudden, teleporting dart, a violently vibrating blur of golden, humming energy that seems to skip magically, instantaneously, from one swaying blossom to the next. They exist perfectly and beautifully in the invisible spaces between our own slow heartbeats, moving with such profound, buzzing, electric speed that they become tiny, living, breathing ghosts of the meadow, beautifully and effortlessly defying the slow, heavy drag of the stagnant, humid air. The incredibly rapid, blurred vibration of their tiny, invisible wings creates a microscopic, almost imperceptible current in the air. A tiny, flowing current that leads us directly to the butterfly's profound, invisible, and deeply ancient connection to the vast, shifting emotional moods of the vast sky above. Long before the absolute first, heavy drop of cold rain shatters the dusty, dry surface of the earth, a butterfly deeply, intuitively senses the approaching storm. Hidden perfectly and flawlessly at the very base of their delicate, long-clubbed antennae is a microscopic, highly sensitive, incredibly complex cluster of nerves known as Johnston's organ. This tiny, invisible anatomical miracle does not simply smell the metallic scent of the coming rain. It physically, palpably feels the subtle, invisible, sweeping drop in the barometric pressure. It physically senses the heavy, building immense weight of the atmosphere pressing slowly and heavily down upon the delicate meadow. Guided by this profound, internal, infallible barometer, the butterfly knows exactly, precisely when to abandon the open, vulnerable, sunlit blossoms and seek immediate, deep, protective shelter beneath the thickest, safest, most unyielding leaves, folding its fragile wings completely and tightly before the chaotic, tearing winds even begin to whisper their warnings through the ancient trees. Feel the incredibly gentle, rhythmic, slow rising and falling of your own chest, perfectly mirroring the profound, still calm that rests heavy before the rain. You're entirely, completely, safely sheltered from the chaotic storms and the heavy winds of the waking world. Your mind is a deeply quiet, completely undisturbed, perfectly silent sanctuary. As the profound, heavy stillness of the sheltering green leaves surrounds you, you sink deeper and deeper and deeper into the soft, comforting, enveloping weight of this completely peaceful trance. The deep, undisturbed, absolute safety found beneath the sheltering, heavy leaves is miraculously and beautifully mirrored by those who boldly wear their safety entirely on the outside, painted brilliantly in colours of absolute, breathtaking and complete defiance. Deep within the dense, wild, tangled thickets, the magnificent pipevine swallowtail glides incredibly slowly, moving without a single fleeting trace of fear or frantic, desperate hurry. Its massive, sweeping wings are a deep, midnight velvet black, shimmering with a breathtaking, sweeping, iridescent wash of oceanic, brilliant blue. These bold, undeniable, entirely unmissable colours are a beautiful, completely honest, and absolutely deadly warning. As a slow, creeping, vulnerable caterpillar, it feeds completely and exclusively on the deeply toxic, bitter, poisonous leaves of the pipevine plant. It absorbs these dark, heavy chemical toxins directly into its own delicate, soft tissues, perfectly miraculously preserving them through the intense, watery chaos of its deep metamorphosis. As a fully winged, beautiful adult, it is completely, entirely unpalatable and highly poisonous to any hunting predator. It flies openly, beautifully in the bright, revealing sunlight, wrapped perfectly and securely in a beautiful, invisible, untouchable shield of ancient botanical chemistry, requiring absolutely no camouflage, no sudden, frantic escape, possessing only the absolute deep, unhurried peace of being entirely, completely untouchable. This profound, untouchable, soaring peace extends far, far beyond the familiar blooming safe boundaries of the grassy meadows, stretching out bravely over the vast, mysterious, endlessly rolling, deep expanses of the open ocean. We absolutely know they effortlessly cross vast, sprawling continents, but some intrepid, impossibly brave, deeply driven species will willingly take to the completely open skies above the vast, salt-sprayed, endless sea. Caught perfectly and helplessly in the powerful, sweeping, invisible currents of the high winds, they can travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away from any solid, welcoming green shore. To survive this vast, deeply blue, terrifying desert of water, they rely on the sudden, miraculous, deeply welcomed appearance of passing ships. In the quiet, deeply isolated, profound darkness of the open ocean night, exhausted, fluttering, tiny wanderers will descend softly from the heavy stars, landing incredibly gently upon the heavy, salt-crusted canvas sails and the thick, deeply tarred rigging. They rest there quietly, beautifully fragile, tiny, silent passengers, hitching a slow, completely silent, necessary ride across the dark, rolling water, before taking courageously to the wind once more when the first, golden, warm rays of the morning sun finally reveal the distant, hazy, promising green outline of a totally new, unseen world. The completely astonishing, breathtaking altitude of these vast migrations reveals another deeply hidden, invisible layer of their magnificent journey, one that lifts them entirely out of the realm of the earth. When we picture a delicate butterfly in gentle flight, we imagine them hovering softly just above the fragrant clovers, or at most, dancing beautifully around the high, swaying branches of an oak. But during the absolute peak of their immense, sweeping generational migrations, these creatures weighing less than a single fallen feather become supreme, undeniable masters of the high atmosphere. Utilizing the deep, invisible, powerful thermal updrafts, massive, swirling columns of naturally rising warm air, they can ride the invisible currents to absolutely staggering, unbelievable heights. Glider pilots, soaring silently through the freezing thin air at 10,000 feet above the earth, have looked out their clear windows to see fragile orange and black monarch butterflies drifting peacefully right alongside them. Up there, in the deeply silent, incredibly cold, thin air, perfectly untouched by the chaotic, heavy world far below, they simply lock their delicate wings and glide, riding the high, freezing rivers of the sky with the supreme, effortless, and breathtaking grace of an ancient, soaring eagle. The beautiful distant arrival at a new sunlit shore descending from those freezing heights is a beautiful, deeply poetic echo of the very first, profound moment of a butterfly's newly winged existence. A deeply transformative moment that requires a final, absolute, entirely physical letting go of the heavy, liquid, binding past. When a newly formed butterfly finally miraculously breaks the transparent, hardened seal of its chrysalis and steps bravely out into the vast, open, unknown air, its delicate abdomen is heavy, deeply swollen with the accumulated liquid waste from its long, dark, incredibly complex period of transformation. Before it can ever hope to lift its delicate new body into the waiting sky, it must completely, entirely purge this final, heavy, grounding tether. It softly, quietly, perfectly expels a single, bright drop of reddish, earth-toned fluid known to science as meconium. It is a beautiful, profound biological necessity, but it is also a profoundly poetic, deeply moving gesture, a literal physical shedding of the old, dissolved, forgotten self, a complete, total emptying out of the heavy past to make perfect, empty room for the incredible, weightless, breathtaking and soaring lightness of its completely new, beautiful future. This breathtaking lightness, this delicate, completely weightless, fluttering spirit, has deeply, profoundly captured the human imagination since the very dawn of our own quiet, spoken stories. Long, long ago, in the ancient, deeply shadowed, quiet villages of old, forested Europe, the sudden, silent, almost magical appearance of these weightless creatures inspired a beautiful, deeply dreamlike folklore. Watching the small, bright, pale yellow wanderers flitting completely silently through the damp meadows in the hazy, magical light of the late fading afternoon, the people deeply believed they were tiny, magical, ethereal spirits, wandering softly through the invisible air to quietly steal small, sweet, delicious drops of cream from the open dairy windows. And so they named this gentle, delicate, entirely weightless spirit the butter-coloured fly. The word itself, repeated over centuries, is a soft, flowing, deeply rhythmic incantation, butterfly. A beautiful, linguistic, deeply comforting echo of an ancient time when the world was filled entirely with quiet magic, where the gentle, completely silent fluttering of a pale, delicate wing was more than enough to perfectly inspire a profound, deeply peaceful, and entirely unbroken sense of absolute wonder. The soft, deeply comforting magic of that ancient name leads us gently away from the misty historic meadows of old Europe and deeper into the hushed, deeply shadowed, intensely warm groves of the tropical rainforest, where the profound, enveloping silence is suddenly, rhythmically, and beautifully broken by a completely unexpected resonance. We so often imagine these delicate creatures as utterly voiceless, as silent, floating monks of the open air. Yet, in the deeply vibrant, humid canopies of Central and South America, the magnificent cracker butterfly absolutely delightfully shatters this quiet myth. When the highly territorial males engage in their fierce, sweeping, incredibly fast aerial dances, sweeping through the dappled light to claim their domain, they physically, sharply, snap the specialized, highly taut veins in their wings together. It produces a distinct, crisp, rhythmic cracking sound, echoing sharply and clearly through the heavy, moisture-laden air, sounding exactly like the sudden snapping of dry, ancient twigs beneath a heavy boot. It is a bold, percussive, totally undeniable declaration of life, a tiny, beating, invisible drum echoing softly in the vast ancient cathedral of the trees, proving that even the most deeply silent, ethereal creatures can find a magnificent way to powerfully, beautifully sing their presence to the waiting world. The sharp, sudden, rhythmic echo of that cracking wing eventually fades, melting softly back into the immense, heavy, unbroken stillness of the forest floor. A stillness so profound, so incredibly deep, that it becomes a physical, tangible, and absolute disguise. Resting quietly upon a low, damp, shadow-draped branch, the incredible Indian leaf butterfly achieves a level of total invisibility that defies absolute belief. When its wings are open, they flash with deep, striking oceanic blues and rich, warm, vibrant oranges. But the exact moment it lands and tightly, firmly closes them, it entirely ceases to be a living, breathing insect. It transforms flawlessly, miraculously into a dead, dry, beautifully decaying, forgotten leaf. The undersides of its delicate wings feature a perfect, dark, continuous midrib, intricate, branching, highly realistic veins, and even incredibly detailed, randomly scattered blemishes that perfectly, flawlessly mimic slow botanical decay and creeping, quiet, natural fungus. It is an absolute masterpiece of deep, motionless deception, hiding perfectly in plain sight by completely, peacefully surrendering its identity, becoming the very essence of the quiet, sleeping autumnal earth. And as you clearly picture this perfect, completely still, resting leaf, your own body intuitively, beautifully mimics this deep, profound stillness. Your muscles are becoming incredibly heavy, sinking comfortably, perfectly, without any resistance into the soft surface beneath you. The need to move, the need to hold on to any tension at all has completely, entirely vanished into the dark. You're resting beautifully, hidden away safely from the demands and the noise of the waking world, just like the peacefully sleeping leaf. This deep, perfectly resting deception of the brown leaf stands in brilliant, stark and magnificent contrast to the wildly bright, incredibly confident, slowly gliding residence of the twisting green passion flower vines. The striking heliconius butterflies, painted boldly in unmistakable vivid strokes of deep crimson, pure velvety black, and bright radiant yellow, absolutely do not attempt to hide. They have evolved a brilliant, ancient and deeply complex chemical pact with the highly toxic, twisting vines they consume as slow, intensely hungry caterpillars. They deeply ingest the plant's deadly, bitter cyanogenic glycosides, safely and perfectly storing these heavy poisons deep within their own delicate, shifting tissues. As fully grown, winged, breathtaking adults, they glide incredibly slowly, almost lazily, through the dappled golden forest light, openly advertising their absolute toxicity with their radiant, unmissable warning colours. They are completely, entirely free from the frantic, desperate, exhausting need to hide or flee, existing completely in a state of supreme, toxic, beautiful confidence, entirely untouched by the fearful, predatory darting shadows of the deep forest. The quiet, internal, safe storage of these ancient botanical poisons reveals an intelligence, a deep, silent botanical wisdom that extends far, far beyond mere survival, reaching beautifully and miraculously into the profound realm of self-healing. We so often think of them purely as simple gatherers of sweet, uncomplicated sugar, but many incredibly complex, highly evolved species practice a deliberate, deeply fascinating art known to science as pharmacophagy. They actively, intentionally and deliberately seek out specific, highly toxic, heavily alkaloid-rich plants, absolutely not for their sweet nectar, but purely for their potent, curative, medicinal properties. The delicate butterflies will fiercely, persistently scratch the wilted, drying, bitter leaves with their tiny, specialized legs to release the harsh, deeply defensive juices, sipping them slowly and deliberately. They use these powerful chemicals to cure internal, microscopic ailments and to arm themselves entirely against unseen, microscopic parasites. It is a profound, incredibly beautiful display of natural intuitive medicine, a quiet, ancient, deeply held knowing of exactly which bitter, broken leaf holds the vital secret to their own deep, continuing and profound wellness. This profound, deeply intuitive connection to the internal chemistry of the blooming world ties them intimately, inextricably to the very future of the vast green forests they wander. As they gently, carefully, and beautifully probe the deep, nectar-filled throats of countless blooming flowers, they unknowingly carry the heavy, glowing golden dust of tomorrow. While the busy, frantic, loudly buzzing bees are explicitly built and designed to gather and carry this pollen, the gentle butterfly acts as an accidental, incredibly graceful, sweeping, silent courier. The microscopic, incredibly sticky, bright golden grains cling softly and perfectly to their fine, hair-like, delicate scales, catching a completely silent ride on their long, unspooled proboscis or their delicate, highly jointed, slender legs. When they drift softly, peacefully, and weightlessly on the warm wind to the next blooming, waiting, colourful blossom, this golden dust is gently, perfectly, and unknowingly transferred. They are the silent, beautiful, entirely innocent matchmakers of the deep botanical world, seamlessly ensuring the endless, continuous, beautiful cycle of seeds and blooming, vibrant life across the vast, sweeping, endless meadows. Allow the incredibly slow, peaceful, deeply rhythmic tempo of this endless blooming cycle to wash gently, comfortably over you. The entire world outside is constantly, beautifully renewing itself, without any frantic effort, without any forced, heavy struggle. You too are renewing with every slow, deep, perfectly quiet breath, inhaling pure, absolute peace, and softly exhaling all remaining lingering tension into the soft, waiting, welcoming dark, the gentle, drifting, entirely wind-blown journey of that golden dust is sometimes carried across distances so incredibly vast, so completely staggering, they almost entirely defy the human mind's ability to comprehend. While the monarch's beautiful, sweeping journey is legendary and deeply revered, the incredibly delicate, intricately and beautifully patterned painted lady butterfly embarks on a migration that completely eclipses almost all others. In years of heavy, abundant, deeply nourishing rain, these fragile, seemingly weak, deeply vulnerable creatures gather in their absolute millions. They lift together into the high, incredibly fast atmospheric currents to to cross the entirety of the vast, scorching, unforgiving, heavily baking Sahara Desert, and then they continue bravely, beautifully, without rest over the glittering, deeply blue expanse of the Mediterranean Sea, to finally reach the cool, green, welcoming shores of northern Europe. It is an impossible, multi-generational epic journey of over 9,000 miles, driven purely by an ancient, whispering, unyielding instinct. They conquer the absolute harshest, most barren, blistering landscapes on the entire planet, armed with absolutely nothing but paper-thin wings and a deeply unyielding, quiet, profound resolve to reach the distant, waiting, blooming meadows, surviving the harsh, searing, incredibly dry heat of such arid, unforgiving skies requires a beautiful, brilliant, and incredibly efficient, almost mechanical mastery of internal water. When these completely exhausted, deeply thirsty, utterly drained travellers finally gently descend to the damp, deeply cooling edge of a muddy puddle or a wet, sandy riverbank, they drink with a voracious, deeply focused, unyielding intensity. But their tiny, delicate, highly compacted bodies absolutely cannot hold the vast, heavy, overwhelming volumes of fluid needed to extract the microscopic, vital, life-saving traces of necessary sodium, so they seamlessly become living, breathing, incredibly efficient, perfectly beautiful filtration systems. As they rapidly, continuously pump the muddy, heavy water in through their delicate proboscis, their complex, tiny internal organs instantly, miraculously strip away the vital, necessary salts, and immediately, rhythmically, and perfectly expel the excess, clear water from the very tips of their abdomens. It is a continuous, flowing, liquid cycle, a deeply mesmerizing, softly pulsing rhythm of pure, unhurried extraction, pulling only the absolute vital essence from the heavy earth, while gracefully letting the heavy, unnecessary remainder flow peacefully, harmlessly away. The rhythmic, pulsing, life-saving extraction of the Earth's deep, ancient minerals directly fuels a highly complex, completely internal, profoundly sophisticated navigation system that relies completely, perfectly upon the sweeping, golden, radiant light of the distant heavens. To cross those vast, completely featureless oceans and those endless, shifting, identical dunes of sand, they absolutely must steer flawlessly. They absolutely do not wander aimlessly or rely on gentle, shifting chance. Hidden perfectly and flawlessly within the very tips of their delicate, gracefully curving antennae are specialized, incredibly sensitive, microscopic light receptors that act as a perfectly calibrated, flawless internal sun compass. These miraculous, tiny, invisible organs can accurately calculate the exact, precise angle of the sun in the sweeping, vast sky, and seamlessly, perfectly combine it with their own internal, deeply ingrained, ticking circadian clock. They know exactly, profoundly what time it is, and they know exactly where the sun should be, allowing them to correct their course instantly, beautifully, and completely silently, flying in a perfectly straight, unwavering, deeply purposeful line across the vast, curved, endlessly turning, massive globe. The deeply guided, brilliantly sun-worshipping, perfect trajectory of their high flight is a beautiful, relatively recent, incredibly vibrant chapter in a much older, profoundly darker, and far more ancient sweeping evolutionary story. Long, long before they dance beautifully in the bright, golden, warm light of the day, their earliest ancestors were completely creatures of the deep, velvety, ancient, unending night. Butterflies are, essentially, a highly specialized, deeply sun-loving, brilliantly colorful offshoot of the vast, incredibly ancient, deeply diverse moth family. Millions of years ago, as the very first, bright, intensely nectar-rich, complex flowering plants began to bloom fiercely and beautifully in the daytime sun, a small, daring, incredible group of nocturnal wanderers slowly, beautifully stepped out of the heavy shadows. they bravely traded their scent-based, quiet, lunar-guided darkness for a deeply vibrant, colour-filled, highly visual, stunning existence in the absolute brilliance of the waking sun. They gracefully shed their drab, deeply camouflaged, earthy cloaks and began to paint themselves in the brilliant, structural, impossible colours we marvel at today, evolving from the quiet, unseen, dusty ghosts of the ancient night into the absolute most brilliant, universally celebrated and deeply loved dancers of the eternal, endless and deeply peaceful morning. The profound, ancient transition from the velvet shadows of the moon into the golden radiance of the sun echoes a rhythm that is billions of years old, a rhythm that is mirrored in the very chemistry of their tiny, shimmering bodies. As the butterfly moved into the light, it didn't just change its colours, it changed the very way it processes the fuel of life. While their nocturnal ancestors relied on the slow, cool metabolism of the darkness, the butterfly became a creature of high energy efficiency. They possess an incredibly specialised, highly efficient metabolic engine that allows them to convert the simple, sugary sugars of floral nectar into pure kinetic energy with almost zero waste. It is a process of such refined elegance that they can go from a state of total, motionless chill to a powerful, sweeping flight in mere seconds, a testament to the miraculous power of a life fueled entirely by the sweet, liquid essence of the Earth's most beautiful blooms. The incredible sweetness of that floral fuel flows through their bodies with a lightness that eventually touches the very foundations of their physical being, into the incredibly delicate, hollow architecture of their skeletons. We are held upright by heavy, dense bones of calcium, but the butterfly is supported by a structure that is almost entirely made of air and memory. Their exoskeleton is formed from a remarkable substance called chitin, a material that is both incredibly strong and impossibly light. But it is not a solid, heavy shell. In many parts of their body, this chitin is arranged in complex microscopic lattices that are mostly hollow, filled with nothing but the same air they breathe. This allows them to maintain a rigid, protective form while remaining light enough to be carried by the absolute faintest of summer breezes. They are, in a very real sense, creatures made of structured air, a beautiful floating paradox of strength and weightlessness that allows them to dance through the atmosphere with a grace that seems to defy the very laws of gravity. And as you begin to feel this same sense of weightlessness, notice how your own body feels as if it is becoming lighter, as if you are being supported by a soft, invisible cushion of air. Every heavy thought is drifting away, leaving you feeling buoyant, effortless, floating in a sea of absolute, perfect tranquility. You are as light as a single, falling scale, drifting deeper and deeper into the quiet blue. The buoyant, airy grace of their light frames allows them to perceive the world through a sense of touch that is as delicate as a whisper against silk. Every single millimetre of their body is adorned with incredibly fine, microscopic hairs known as sensilla. Approaching wing, long before that approaching wing, long before that predator is ever seen, they can feel the microscopic vibrations of a distant thunderclap travelling through the stems of a flower. When they land, these hairs send an immediate complex map of the leaf's texture directly to their tiny, efficient brains. They live in a world of constant, gentle physical feedback, a world where every breeze is a story and every vibration is a message, allowing them to navigate the chaotic, moving forest with a precision that is entirely, beautifully silent. The silent, vibrating messages of the forest lead us eventually to a hidden, incredibly complex subterranean alliance, a secret world where the butterfly's life is inextricably linked to the deep, dark labour of the ants. In the quiet, mossy corners of the meadow, the caterpillars of certain blue butterflies have evolved a language of pure chemical persuasion. These caterpillars do not merely hide from ants, they actively invite them in. They produce a specialised, incredibly sweet honeydew that is irresistible to the ants, and in some truly remarkable cases, They even produce chemical signals that smell exactly like an ant larva. The ants, completely fooled by this perfect chemical mask, will actually carry the caterpillar deep into the heart of their own dark, safe underground nest. There, the caterpillar is treated as royalty, protected from the harsh world above, and fed by the ants until it is ready to transform. It is a profound, slightly mischievous display of natural diplomacy, a beautiful, hidden subterranean kingdom where the future of the sky is nurtured in the deep protective silence of the earth. This deep, dark, earthbound nurture eventually gives way to a transformation that is not just a change of form, but a change of the very way they experience the passage of time itself. To a butterfly, a single day is an entire vast epoch of experience. Their nervous systems process visual information at a rate that is nearly 10 times faster than our own. While we see a bird's wing as a blur of motion, the butterfly sees every individual, slow beat, with absolute crystalline clarity. They live in a world that moves in beautiful rhythmic slow motion. To them, the falling of a raindrop is a long dramatic event. The swaying of a flower in the wind is a slow, majestic dance. This rapid perception allows them to make split-second decisions in mid-air, weaving through dense branches with an agility that is almost supernatural. They inhabit the spaces between our moments, living a life that is intensely vibrant, incredibly fast, and yet somehow perfectly, deeply peaceful. And as this knowledge of their slow, beautiful time settles into your mind, your own internal clock begins to slow. The minutes are stretching out, becoming wide, spacious, and incredibly calm. There is no hurry here, no deadline, only the slow, rhythmic turning of the world. You are moving at the speed of a dream, drifting into a space where time has no meaning, and only peace remains. The spacious, unhurried time of their fast-motion world is eventually written into the very patterns of their wings, patterns that are sometimes designed not to hide, but to completely, utterly confuse the eye of the observer. In the sun-dappled glades of the tropical forest, the map butterfly presents a visual puzzle that is breathtaking in its complexity. Their wings are not painted in broad strokes of colour, but in thousands of incredibly fine, intersecting lines and subtle, earthy washes that perfectly mimic the appearance of a crumpled, dried leaf or a fragment of ancient, weathered bark. But the true genius of the map pattern lies in its ability to break up the butterfly's silhouette. As they move through the shifting light, these lines create an optical illusion that makes it impossible for a predator to determine where the butterfly begins and the forest ends. They become a living fragment of the landscape, a moving piece of the map that is constantly rewriting itself with every beat of their wings, a beautiful, fluttering riddle that is never meant to be solved. The shimmering riddle of their camouflage eventually fades into the deep, cooling shadows of the high-altitude forests, where the survival of the individual is secondary to the survival of the great ancient lineage. We return for a final quiet moment to the monarchs, huddling together in their millions in the Oyamel fir forests of Mexico. In these high, misty mountains, the air is so thin and the nights are so cold that a single butterfly sleeping alone would surely freeze. But by huddling together in massive, dense, quivering blankets, they create their own microscopic climate. The collective heat of millions of tiny bodies raises the temperature of the cluster, just enough to keep them alive through the freezing alpine nights. They become a single, massive, breathing organism, a shimmering orange mountain of life that waits in a state of deep, frozen patience for the first warmth of the spring sun. It is a profound display of communal strength, a beautiful, silent reminder that even the most fragile of beings can survive the harshest of winters when they lean into the warmth of one another. Feel the warm, comforting presence of this communal rest. You are part of a vast, peaceful tapestry of life, all resting, all breathing together in the quiet dark. You're not alone in your stillness. You're surrounded by a deep collective calm that is as old as the mountains themselves. You're safe, you're warm, you're perfectly at rest. This collective mountaintop stillness eventually breaks with the first golden whisper of the spring thaw, a moment of awakening that is guided by a sense of direction that is truly, deeply cosmic. As the monarchs begin their long journey north, they are not just following the sun, they are feeling the very heartbeat of the planet itself. Deep within their eyes, scientists have discovered specialized proteins called cryptochromes that are sensitive to the Earth's magnetic field. It is believed that these proteins allow the butterfly to literally see the magnetic lines of the planet, overlaid like a glowing, invisible grid upon the landscape. They navigate not by landmarks, but by the ancient magnetic pulse of the Earth itself. They are tuned to a frequency that we can barely imagine, a cosmic planetary rhythm that guides them across thousands of miles of unknown territory with the precision of a master mariner. They are the Earth's own travellers, forever in sync with the deep, invisible forces that hold our world together. The invisible magnetic pulse of the Earth leads us finally to the absolute breathtaking variety of their forms, a variety that is a testament to the endless, beautiful creativity of life. There are over 20,000 distinct species of butterflies, and each one is a unique, exquisite variation on the theme of light and flight. From the tiny gem-like blues that are no larger than a grain of rice, to the massive velvet-winged giants that rule the canopy, every single one of them is a masterpiece of adaptation. Some have wings shaped like commas, others have tails that look like long, flowing streamers. Some are as bright as a neon sign, while others are as muted and earthy as a handful of forest floor. They have conquered every environment, from the driest deserts to the wettest jungles, proving that beauty is not just a luxury, but a powerful, resilient, and essential tool for survival. They are the living flowers of the air, the fluttering proof that our world is a place of infinite, breathtaking, and deeply peaceful wonder. And as this final truth settled deep within the quiet library of your mind, you realize that you have travelled far, yet you have never left the absolute safety of your rest. The stories of these winged wonders have become part of your own deep inner landscape, a landscape of velvet wings, golden sunbeams, and endless peaceful meadows. Your journey for today is complete, but the beauty you have absorbed will remain with you, tucked safely away in the quietest corners of your subconscious. You're ready now to drift into the deepest, most restorative sleep, a sleep that is as light as air and as deep as the ancient forest. The world of the butterfly is now your world, and in this world there is only peace, only stillness, and the soft rhythmic beating of 1,000 invisible wings carrying you gently into the heart of your dreams. The soft rhythmic beating of those 1,000 invisible wings carries us gently from the quiet heart of our deepest dreams, back to the very first beautifully fragile moment of a butterfly's waking life. We have marvelled at their long, delicate, curling proboscis, that perfect, elegant instrument used to sip the sweet liquid essence of the blooming meadow. But this incredibly complex, vital tool is not born whole and complete. When a butterfly first miraculously pushes its way out of the dark, protective shell of its chrysalis, entering the bright, sweeping light of the sun for the very first time, its feeding tube is actually split entirely in two. It hangs beneath their delicate head as two separate, distinct, U-shaped halves. In those first, quiet, incredibly vulnerable hours, as their crumpled, damp wings slowly fill with fluid and begin to expand, the butterfly must perform a profound, meticulous act of self-assembly. They begin to repeatedly, rhythmically coil and uncoil these two separate halves, pressing them softly but firmly together. Lined perfectly along the inner edges of these tubes are thousands of microscopic, incredibly precise biological hooks and grooves. With every slow, deliberate curl, these tiny hooks catch and lock together, perfectly zipping the two halves into a single, flawless, airtight channel. It is a beautiful, deeply focused moment of silent preparation. the delicate, necessary knitting together of their very means of survival, completed in the quiet golden light before their very first, breathtaking flight into the vast open sky. The perfect, seamless unity of this delicate instrument leads us into the dappled, intensely contrasting light of the deep rainforest canopy, where unity of form creates the most brilliant, entirely mesmerizing optical illusion. We have spoken of the magnificent soaring blue morpho, its massive sweeping wings painted in an iridescent structural blue so impossibly bright it seems to rival the very sky. But this breathtaking brilliance is only half of their visual story. The completely hidden, secret undersides of their broad wings are painted in deep, earthy, muted chocolates and rich, velvety browns, heavily adorned with large, highly realistic, startling eye spots. When this magnificent creature finally takes to the heavy, humid air, it does not merely fly. It utilizes the harsh, piercing shafts of sunlight penetrating the dark canopy to create a profound, completely dazzling strobe effect. With every powerful, sweeping downward beat, the forest is illuminated by a sudden, blinding electric flash of pure, radiant azure, and with every upward stroke, the wings instantly close, and the butterfly miraculously, entirely vanishes into the dark, earthy shadows of the forest background. Flash and vanish, brilliant light, and total, absolute shadow. To a hunting bird, watching from the high branches, this rhythmic, impossible blinking is deeply, entirely disorienting. They cannot track a creature that seems to constantly blink out of physical existence, perfectly protected by the beautiful hypnotic rhythm of its own, shifting, dazzling light. The rhythmic, shifting light of the forest canopy slowly, beautifully cools, softening into the pale, stark and perfectly still light of the deep winter woods. Here, the vibrant, frantic energy of the summer has completely surrendered to the heavy, silent, crushing weight of the frost. Yet, nestled perfectly and quietly within the deep, dark crevices of the ancient freezing bark, the beautiful brimstone butterfly slumbers, entirely untouched by the deadly creeping ice. As the temperature plummets far below the point of freezing, and the moisture in the surrounding leaves hardens into sharp, brittle crystals, the butterfly's tiny, slow-beating heart initiates a profound, miraculous chemical defense. Their bodies actively begin to produce and flood their delicate tissues with a heavy, thick, incredibly concentrated surge of pure natural glycerol, a complex biological sugar that acts as a flawless, incredibly potent antifreeze. This heavy, sweet serum physically lowers the freezing point of their internal fluids, absolutely preventing the jagged, deadly ice crystals from forming and tearing through their fragile microscopic cells. They exist in a state of deep, frozen, suspended animation, supercooled, entirely perfectly preserved in the absolute darkest, coldest depths of the season. Waiting with infinite ancient patience for the distant, inevitable and gentle warmth of the coming spring. And as this deep, cooling frost settles gently into the silent forest, you can feel the beautiful, heavy stillness of the winter settling perfectly into your own resting body. The frantic, rushing demands of your waking day are frozen, perfectly suspended far, far away from this quiet sanctuary. Your breathing is slow, so incredibly rhythmic and deep, matching the slow, patient pulse of the sleeping earth. You're completely safe within this cooling, dark peace. Echoing this profound, wintry silence is a completely different kind of quiet, a stealth so incredibly perfect it allows the delicate wanderers to vanish entirely from the unseen, sweeping acoustic nets of the deep night. The beautiful nocturnal cousins of the butterfly, moving softly through the velvet darkness, face the terrifying invisible threat of hunting bats, whose high-frequency clicking sonar can detect the absolute slightest rustle of a fragile wing. but nature has woven a perfect, completely silent defense directly into the fabric of their flight. The millions of microscopic overlapping scales that cover their bodies and wings are not merely flat, colourful shingles. They're incredibly complex, highly textured, deeply porous structures that act as the world's most efficient natural acoustic dampeners. When the sharp, penetrating sound waves of a bat's sonar strike the butterfly's soft velvet body, the sound is not reflected back into the dark air. Instead, it is beautifully, perfectly absorbed, swallowed entirely by the deep, microscopic valleys and ridges of the scales. The butterfly becomes an acoustic ghost, a completely invisible, silent shadow drifting effortlessly through the treacherous night, leaving absolutely no echo behind them as they dance peacefully under the watchful, silver light of the moon. The quiet silver light of the moon slowly yields to the pale, rosy warmth of a new unfolding dawn, illuminating the very first solitary moments of a completely new life, clinging tightly to the underside of a dew-drenched leaf. When the tiny, impossibly small caterpillar finally chews its way out of the intricate microscopic fortress of its egg, it does not immediately begin to devour the soft green plant material beneath it. Its very first, absolutely essential meal is the delicate, pearlescent, empty shell of the egg itself. This microscopic, highly structured dome known as the chorion is incredibly rich in dense, vital, essential proteins and vital, grounding calcium. By turning back and slowly, methodically consuming the very walls that safely housed it, through its earliest development, the tiny creature reclaims all of the precious, hard-won maternal energy that was invested in its creation. It is a beautiful, profoundly efficient act of complete biological recycling, a perfect, quiet honouring of its own beginnings, ensuring that absolutely nothing is wasted in the vast, perfectly balanced and deeply economical tapestry of the natural world. The careful, quiet consumption of those earliest proteins eventually fuels a life capable of the most extravagant, beautifully perfumed displays of aerial courtship. In the warm, slanting golden light of the late summer afternoon, the large, magnificently patterned, silver-washed fritillary engages in a mating dance of breathtaking, deeply sensory complexity. As the female flies in a slow, steady, incredibly graceful straight line just above the blooming, fragrant thistles, the male swoops beautifully and dramatically beneath her, flying in a sweeping, continuous, elegant loop. As he passes directly beneath her delicate form, he intentionally, powerfully flutters his wings, releasing an incredibly dense, invisible, perfectly directed cloud of specialized, deeply fragrant scent scales known as androconia. He literally showers her in invisible, heavy perfume of pure chemical attraction, a beautiful, incredibly romantic, completely silent serenade of scent. He wraps her entirely in a floating, moving aura of his own vitality, painting the golden, warm air with an invisible, intoxicating fragrance that speaks volumes more than any spoken word or sudden flash of brilliant colour ever could. Feel this golden, heavy warmth washing over you now, bathing you completely in a deep, profound sense of absolute comfort. Every single muscle in your heavy, resting limbs is letting go, yielding perfectly to the soft, supportive surface beneath you. The air around you is thick with peace, wrapping you in an invisible, deeply soothing blanket of calm. You're drifting effortlessly, beautifully deeper. The invisible, fragrant blanket of the fritillary's dance leads us gently to a highly visible, deeply complex and incredibly tactile blanket, woven from the purest, most resilient silver silk. While we so often picture the caterpillar as a solitary, intensely vulnerable wanderer, many species, like the deeply striking small tortoiseshell, begin their lives in a profound state of beautiful communal harmony. When the hundreds of tiny, fragile siblings first emerge, they do not scatter into the vast, dangerous wilderness of the stinging nettle patches. Instead, working together with flawless, instinctual, microscopic precision, they begin to furiously, continuously spin. They weave an enormous, highly complex, deeply protective silken tent, stretching the strong silver threads across the broad, stinging leaves, completely enveloping themselves in a soft, impenetrable fortress. Inside this shimmering, silken cathedral, they live, eat, and grow entirely together, perfectly protected from the harsh, biting winds and the sharp, probing eyes of hunting birds. They move as a single, undulating, darkly coloured mass within the shining white web, sharing their collective warmth and their deep, absolute safety, proving that even in the smallest, most fragile corners of the wild, there is profound, undeniable strength and comfort in deep, unbroken community. The profound communal safety of the silken tent stands in stark, fascinating contrast to those solitary wanderers who seek their ultimate protection in the dark, heavy, and deeply potent alchemy of botanical toxins. The elegant, deeply rust-coloured queen butterfly, a close, beautiful cousin to the famous monarch, engages in a lifelong, incredibly specific and totally unyielding quest for a specific, dangerous chemical. The adult males absolutely must seek out the wilted, drying, deeply bitter leaves and stems of the crotalaria plant. They scratch at the dying plant tissues, sipping the oozing, toxic sap to extract a heavy, highly specialised group of chemicals known as pyrrolizidine alkaloids. But they do not gather these heavy toxins merely for their own bitter defence. In a breathtaking display of chemical mastery, the male intricately metabolises these raw, dark poisons, seamlessly converting them into the primary, absolutely essential ingredient of his own, sweet-smelling, irresistible mating pheromones. He takes the deepest, most dangerous poison of the blooming meadow and magically, flawlessly transforms it into the absolute essence of life and profound attraction. To the female queen butterfly, the scent of this deep, underlying toxicity is the undeniable, beautiful scent of a strong, capable, and profoundly worthy mate. Echoing this ancient botanical alchemy is a mastery of physical light that is so incredibly perfect, it borders on the completely supernatural. Deep in the deeply shadowed, fiercely tangled undergrowth of the Amazon, the delicate, ghostly clearwing butterfly drifts through the heavy, humid air like a completely transparent floating phantom. We know that their wings are completely devoid of the colourful, overlapping scales that paint their cousins, but the absolute transparency of their delicate wings is achieved by something far more complex than simply being clear glass. The incredibly thin, resilient membrane of their wings is completely coated in millions of perfectly arranged, microscopic, towering structures known to science as nanopillars. These incredibly tiny, flawlessly spaced towers act as the world's most perfect, natural, anti-reflective coating. They capture and softly bend the incoming light so flawlessly, so completely, that absolutely zero light is reflected back into the observer's eye. There is no sudden, betraying glare, no shiny, plastic-like reflection when the sun strikes their wings. They achieve a state of absolute, profound optical emptiness, allowing the incredibly sharp, vibrant green of the jungle to pass through them completely, flawlessly undisturbed, making them the ultimate invisible masters of the dappled, shifting light. The absolute clarity of this perfect invisible window carries our thoughts, finally, gently, to the opaque, deeply mysterious, and perfectly still jade jewel hanging in the shadows, the chrysalis. We look upon this smooth, motionless, deeply green or brown casing and assume it is completely sealed, an airtight, solid vault locked tightly against the outside world. But the transforming miracle occurring within absolutely requires the continuous, gentle, and perfect breath of the atmosphere. The hardened, incredibly tough outer shell of the pupa is completely covered in a vast, highly complex network of microscopic, invisible pores. These incredibly tiny, delicate spiracles act as highly intelligent, self-regulating valves. In the deeply arid, intensely dry, baking heat of the desert, these microscopic doors close incredibly tightly, perfectly locking the vital, precious moisture inside the transforming creature, preventing it from drying into dust. But when the cool, damp night falls, or when the heavy rains come, these tiny valves open wide, gently breathing in the essential, life-giving oxygen required to fuel the massive, profound, and beautiful cellular rebuilding happening in the quiet, absolute dark. It is a completely silent, deep, and perfectly measured breathing, a slow, rhythmic exchange of the world's ancient air, holding the absolute deepest mysteries of life safely within its completely motionless, beautiful form. And as you visualize this deep, perfectly measured, and incredibly quiet breathing, you sink completely, effortlessly, perfectly into the quiet, dark. Your own breathing is just as slow, just as perfectly measured and beautifully calm. The deep, safe silence of the chrysalis is now your silence, wrapping you in an impenetrable, soft, and incredibly heavy blanket of absolute, unbroken peace. The deep, safe silence of the chrysalis is now your silence, wrapping you in an impenetrable, soft, and incredibly heavy blanket of absolute, unbroken peace. The heavy, silent blanket of the hanging chrysalis holds a startling, brilliantly disguised secret of deeply sudden, defensive movement. We so naturally assume that within this hardened jade-green shell, the transforming creature is entirely, completely helpless, locked away in a state of deeply vulnerable paralysis. Yet, many species maintain a profound, deeply hidden connection to the waking, dangerous world outside. A highly specialized, beautifully engineered, flexible hinge located precisely between the tiny, segmented plates of their abdomen remains entirely, remarkably active. When the delicate, probing shadow of a hunting wasp falls upon the smooth surface, or when a tiny, threatening vibration ripples through the supporting leaf, the seemingly lifeless sleeping jewel violently, rapidly, and rhythmically thrashes side to side. It is a sudden, powerful, deeply unexpected earthquake in miniature, a brilliant, shocking mechanical defense designed to completely startle and perfectly repel the intruder, protecting the deeply silent internal miracle of their own, slow, watery becoming. The miraculous watery becoming eventually yields to the bright open air, where the urgent deep instinct to create life requires a completely new, incredibly intimate way of touching the physical world. When the beautifully winged mother finally descends through the dappled light to select the absolute perfect safe cradle for her microscopic eggs, she does not merely rely on the delicate, highly sensitive chemical receptors woven into her tiny feet. She engages in a profound, deeply careful, and incredibly specific botanical kiss. As she gently, gracefully curves her long, delicate abdomen underneath the broad green leaf, the very tip, the ovipositor, presses softly against the plant's textured skin. Embedded perfectly within this vital, life-giving structure, a highly specialized microscopic taste sensilla. She is physically, profoundly tasting the deep, chemical signature of the leaf directly with the very organ that will release her precious young. It is a perfect, deeply focused and entirely silent confirmation, a profound biological guarantee that the green nursery she chooses is absolutely, flawlessly safe and nourishing for the tiny crawling lives to come. The specific, deeply tasted chemistry of that chosen leaf is deeply, profoundly intertwined with the vast, sweeping and ever-shifting moods of the grand turning seasons. In the deeply ancient, heavily sweeping savannas of the African continent, the magnificent bush-brown butterfly is born into two entirely different, deeply contrasting visual worlds. The exact same, identical genetic blueprint gives rise to two completely, beautifully different masks, entirely dependent on the specific weather of their birth. Caterpillars that grow slowly during the heavy, lush, deeply vibrant rains of the wet season emerge as breathtaking adults painted with massive, highly visible, striking eye spots, designed perfectly to deflect the sudden strikes of abundant, active predators. But those born into the parched, heavily baking, entirely brown landscape of the dry season emerge completely, miraculously changed. Their wings are devoid of any bright spots, perfectly, flawlessly mirroring the dull, withered, heavily decayed leaves of the deep drought. It is a profound, beautifully silent magic. The heavy, turning weather of the vast world reaching deep down to perfectly, flawlessly paint the fragile wings of the unborn. And as you picture this perfect, natural adaptation, your own mind beautifully adapts to this deep, enveloping quiet. Notice how easily, how smoothly you are sinking into the absolute comfort of the shadows. Your body is perfectly attuned to the slow, heavy, deeply relaxing rhythm of this journey. You're flowing seamlessly with the current of sleep, entirely, beautifully safe. To perfectly navigate the shifting, intensely colourful and deeply shadowed seasons, they require a window into reality that completely, profoundly dwarfs our own human perception. We gaze out upon the vast, beautiful world and proudly perceive the shifting landscapes through a spectrum built purely upon three primary colours. But the magnificent, deeply striking, common bluebottle butterfly, darting incredibly fast through the warm, humid air of the Asian tropics, sees a universe we can absolutely, truly never imagine. Deep within the thousands of microscopic, perfect hexagonal lenses of their massive eyes, they possess an astonishing, deeply unfathomable 15 entirely distinct types of photoreceptors. They perceive the deep, glowing ultraviolet secrets of the hidden flowers, the subtle, shifting polarization of the vast blue sky, and thousands upon thousands of entirely new, impossible colours that have no name in any human language. They live completely, peacefully bathed in a deeply saturated, unbelievably complex and entirely invisible symphony of pure, radiant light. Bathing in this deeply complex, radiant light, they must maneuver their fragile, paper-thin forms through the chaotic, churning, entirely invisible rivers of the open air. We know their beautifully elegant, deeply clubbed antennae are masterful microscopic instruments of smell, capable of pulling a single sweet molecule from the vast evening sky. But in the very midst of their rapid, sweeping, deeply agile flight, these delicate wands serve a completely different, profoundly mechanical, and incredibly vital purpose. They act as perfectly tuned, highly complex internal gyroscopes. At the very base of each antenna lies a microscopic cluster of highly sensitive nerves that physically feels the subtle, twisting, deep pull of the Coriolis force as the butterfly banks and turns in the heavy air. This tiny invisible organ instantly, flawlessly calculates the exact speed, pitch, and yaw of their beautiful body, sending rapid, continuous, perfect adjustments directly to their heavily muscled thorax, allowing them to dance flawlessly, beautifully and completely undisturbed through the wildly chaotic, completely unpredictable, and shifting breath of the wind. This wildly beautiful, deeply agile dance demands a cardiovascular engine of profound, almost impossible, and deeply poetic flexibility. When the heavy, intense, burning exertion of a long, sun-drenched flight causes the delicate temperature within their heavily muscled thorax to rise to dangerous, deeply critical levels, their simple, elongated, pulsing tubular heart performs a completely miraculous, deeply necessary feat. It does not merely beat faster, it possesses the incredible, astonishing ability to entirely, completely reverse the direction of its slow, rhythmic flow. Instead of continuously heavily pumping the pale, nourishing hemolymph forward toward the head, The tiny pulsing muscles completely change their rhythmic beating sequence, suddenly sweeping the cool, heavy fluid backward, deep into the elongated, cooler sanctuary of the abdomen. It is a perfect, flawless, internal cooling system, a deeply beautiful, highly sophisticated pulsing tide that shifts beautifully, effortlessly, and completely in perfect harmony with the intense, changing demands of their soaring sunlit life. Let the slow, rhythmic, perfectly reversing tide of that tiny heartbeat wash over your own thoughts, completely soothing, completely calming. Every time you breathe deeply in, you draw in pure, absolute peace, and every time you breathe softly out, you release all the heavy, lingering warmth of the long waking day. You're drifting so beautifully, perfectly deep. The pulsing, life-giving fluid of this beautiful reversing heart is nourished by elements far more deeply complex and sometimes far darker than the simple, bright sweetness of the sunlit meadow. Deep in the most heavily shadowed, intensely humid, and profoundly ancient understory of the tropical jungle, many of the most vibrant, fiercely colourful, and breathtakingly beautiful species absolutely ignore the high, blooming orchids. They are drawn powerfully, irresistibly downward into the dark, heavy, quiet decay of the forest floor. They seek out the deeply rotting, fallen fruits, the highly mineralized, damp clay, and even the heavy, intensely pungent decay of fallen, forgotten creatures. It is a deeply beautiful, profound, and entirely necessary cycle of pure alchemy. They gently, peacefully extract the vital raw amino acids, the heavy, necessary salts, and the deep, grounding nitrogen from the very essence of death itself, miraculously, beautifully transforming the heavy decay of the dark earth into the absolutely most radiant, soaring, breathtakingly colourful life of the open air. The vital, deeply gathered energy extracted from the quiet, shadowed earth is heavily, perfectly protected against the creeping, invisible chill of the deep forest. We naturally think of butterflies as smooth, completely delicate creatures of the hot, baking summer, completely devoid of the heavy, insulating coats worn by the mammals of the winter snows. But if you look incredibly closely at the strong, central, heavily muscled thorax, the very engine room of their magnificent flight, you will find a deep, surprisingly thick, incredibly luxurious pile of modified, elongated scales. This incredibly fine, beautifully soft, deeply furry coat acts precisely, perfectly like a miniature, highly efficient thermal blanket. It traps the heavy, vital, internal heat generated by their rapidly vibrating flight muscles, preventing the cold, damp morning air from stealing their precious hard-won energy. They wear their own beautiful, deeply soft, invisible winter coats, allowing them to soar beautifully, powerfully, and warmly through the absolute coolest, most deeply shadowed corridors of the ancient woods. When the cool, deeply shadowed corridors finally, beautifully succumb to the absolute heavy darkness of the deep night, this warm, furiously vibrating engine completely, entirely powers down. We have seen them close their vibrant wings to hide from the silver light of the moon, but their deep, profound nocturnal rest is a state of near-complete, total physiological surrender known as deep torpor. The bright, alert, perfectly rigid posture of the day is entirely abandoned. Their long, highly sensitive, sweeping antennae, which normally stand at absolute rigid attention, searching the vast wind, lose all of their internal fluid pressure. They droop heavily, completely limp, pointing straight, lifelessly downward toward the quiet, sleeping earth. Their tiny, delicate legs lock perfectly, flawlessly into place, requiring absolutely zero muscular effort to maintain their tight, secure grip on the swaying stem. They do not merely sleep, they completely, beautifully turn off, becoming entirely, perfectly inanimate, deeply peaceful fragments of the dark, waiting with infinite silent patience for the bright, warm, golden kiss of the dawn to slowly rebuild their pressure and awaken their heavy, resting souls. And you too can allow your mind to completely, beautifully power down. Just like those drooping, heavy antennae, you can let go of the need to search, the need to reach out. Let all of your awareness droop softly, heavily downward, sinking deeply into the absolute comfort of the mattress. You're completely, perfectly locked into a state of deep, undisturbed, absolute safety, completely, beautifully at rest. This profound, heavy, perfectly collective sleep in the dark is a beautiful, quiet echo of their earliest crawling days, a time when the darkness was navigated not by sight, but by a continuous, highly complex, deeply chemical thread of absolute, pure brotherhood. In the deep, heavily tangled safety of the stinging nettle patches and the thick, thorny hawthorn bushes, the tiny, highly vulnerable caterpillars of many deeply communal species never truly wander alone. As they move slowly, blindly through the vast, overwhelming labyrinth of the green leaves in search of food, they continuously, rhythmically, spin an incredibly fine, deeply shimmering, unbroken thread of pure, specialized silk from their mouths. But this beautiful silver line is also heavily, deeply laced with highly specific, strongly scented, invisible pheromones. It creates a completely flawless, unmissable, highly scented chemical highway in the dark. Every sibling that follows reinforces the beautiful, glowing, highly scented path, creating a profound, deeply connected, completely silent network of pure guidance, ensuring that no matter how far they wander into the vast unknown green, they can always, perfectly and beautifully find their way safely back to the deep, absolute comfort of their shared, resting home. The deep, profoundly connected safety of that shimmering silver highway eventually guides us to a much more private, deeply solitary mastery of the spun thread. While many rest openly in the dark, certain highly specialized, incredibly cautious caterpillars become tiny, masterful architects of the green, waking world. Using their strong rhythmic jaws and that endlessly flowing, perfectly liquid silk, they carefully, deliberately pull the opposing edges of a living broad leaf completely together. They weave heavy, completely unyielding bands of silver across the gap, physically bending the stubborn plant tissue until it folds entirely over their soft bodies. They literally sew the forest shut, creating a perfect, deeply hidden, entirely customized sleeping bag. Inside this beautifully constructed living tent, the harsh, bright light of the midday sun is filtered into a soft, glowing, deeply calming emerald haze, providing a completely secure, absolutely private sanctuary away from the sharp, prying eyes of the vast, hungry canopy. The glowing emerald haze of this private, leafy sanctuary is absolutely necessary for the most exhausting, deeply transformative and profoundly vulnerable ordeal of their creeping life, the shedding of their very skin. Because their outer skeleton is completely rigid, it absolutely cannot stretch as they endlessly feast and grow. To accommodate their expanding heavy bodies, they must periodically miraculously break entirely out of themselves. Within the quiet safety of their folded leaf, they become perfectly, completely still. Slowly, their old skin splits perfectly down the back, and a completely new, incredibly soft, slightly larger creature slowly, rhythmically pulls itself free. They leave behind a perfect, translucent, completely empty ghost of their former self, right down to the tiny, clear casing of their previous eyes. It is a profound, beautifully silent act of letting go, a deeply physical shedding of the past, emerging completely fresh, beautifully renewed, and entirely ready to take in even more of the vibrant, blooming world. And as you observe this gentle shedding, this safe, beautiful renewal, your own breathing slows. you too can effortlessly shed the heavy, rigid constraints of the day, letting the old, tired layers of thought simply fall away into the dark. You're emerging into a softer, quieter space, breathing in pure, absolute peace. This beautifully soft, highly vulnerable state of renewal invites the absolute most breathtaking, highly theatrical illusions of the dense green canopy. When you possess absolutely no armour and are made entirely of soft, delicate tissue, you must borrow the terrifying mask of a monster. The magnificent spicebush swallowtail caterpillar achieves a level of deep visual deception that is truly, deeply startling. It deliberately swells the thickest part of its body to perfectly mimic the broad, diamond-shaped head of a dangerous, venomous green snake. Painted flawlessly onto its back are two massive, unblinking, beautifully terrifying false eyes, complete with dark, realistic pupils and brilliant, glowing yellow highlights that perfectly simulate the reflection of the sun on a wet reptilian scale. When a hungry bird peers into the leaves, it does not see a soft, helpless insect. It is met with the sudden, terrifying, ancient stare of a deadly serpent. A beautiful, entirely harmless phantom conjured purely from colour and swollen air, winning its survival through a masterpiece of profound, sudden fear. The visual theatre of this painted serpent is sometimes paired with a deeply hidden, beautifully chemical surprise that perfectly completes the startling illusion. If the terrifying, unblinking stare of the false snake is not enough to deter a persistent, curious predator, the caterpillar absolutely does not run. Instead, it rears suddenly backward and miraculously averts a completely hidden, highly pressurized, fleshy, glowing orange structure from directly behind its head. This magnificent, deeply startling organ, known as the osmeterium, looks exactly like the wildly flickering, deeply forked tongue of a striking viper. But it is not merely visual. It instantly releases an incredibly pungent, deeply acrid, overwhelmingly sweet and chemical cloud of potent defensive odours. It is a dragon in absolute miniature, wielding a brilliant, invisible, powerfully scented fire that instantly deeply disorients and completely repels the attacker. A flawless, multi-sensory defense wrapped entirely within the soft, heavy folds of a tiny, creeping wanderer. The sudden, bright burst of that hidden fragrance eventually yields to the final, absolute surrender of their earthbound form. A surrender that requires a radically different, entirely gravity-defying use of their silver thread. While we have seen the heavy caterpillars hang upside down in a simple, suspended J shape, many of the most magnificent, deeply ancient species choose to face the sky. Before entering the profound, watery sleep of the pupa, the caterpillar meticulously, carefully weaves a thick, incredibly strong, beautifully customized silken belt entirely around its own waist. It fastens this shimmering safety harness tightly to a strong vertical stem, leaning back perfectly into the loop like a tiny resting telephone linesman high on a wooden pole. This brilliant, deeply secure silken girdle holds the newly formed, soft chrysalis perfectly, tightly upright, absolutely preventing it from swinging violently in the harsh, tearing winds of the turning seasons. It is an act of total, absolute trust, resting the entire heavy weight of their impending miraculous future upon a single, flawless, unbreakable thread of their own creation. The absolute unyielding security of that silken harness ensures that when the miraculous watery transformation is finally, beautifully complete, the new, deeply fragile creature has a safe, perfectly stable platform for its most critical, breathtaking task. Stepping bravely out of the shattered, transparent shell, the new butterfly does not resemble the wide-winged dancer we know. Its wings are incredibly tiny, deeply crumpled, completely soft, and entirely useless, tightly folded like a deeply crushed piece of wet velvet. Clinging fiercely to its old, empty casing, it begins the slow, powerful, and deeply rhythmic process of true expansion. Its tiny tubular heart beats fiercely, powerfully pumping the pale, heavy, life-giving hemolymph directly out of its swollen abdomen and into the deeply complex, branching, empty veins of its waiting wings. We can literally beautifully watch the crumpled canvas slowly, miraculously unfold and spread, straightening perfectly into a wide, stiff, radiant masterpiece. It is a completely mesmerizing, deeply triumphant, and entirely unhurried unfolding of life. Allow this slow, patient expansion to become your own, filling every part of your resting body with a deep, liquid sense of absolute peace. Just as the delicate wings slowly, perfectly unfurl, you can feel your own tightly held tension beautifully, completely unspooling, letting go, spreading out into a vast, heavy, and completely undisturbed calm. You are resting beautifully, perfectly open to the quiet dark. The slow, triumphant expansion of these newly painted canvases often reveals a brilliant, highly strategic sacrifice painted directly onto their absolute outermost, fragile edges. As we admire the breathtaking, absolute perfection of a newly dried wing, we often notice incredibly bright, highly contrasting, beautifully circular targets completely decorating the very far outer margins, particularly on the trailing hindwings. These stunning, unmissable targets are absolutely not designed to blend in. They're explicitly, loudly designed to draw immediate focused attention. They are deflection marks. When a hunting bird dives rapidly through the dappled light, its sharp, tracking eyes are instinctively, powerfully drawn to the most high-contrast, brightest target available. The bird strikes fiercely at the striking spot, but completely misses the deeply vital, completely essential central body of the butterfly. The bird's sharp beak tears away only a fragile, perfectly harmless, beautifully sacrificed piece of empty wing membrane. The butterfly escapes instantly, flying beautifully and wildly into the safety of the canopy, wearing its freshly torn, jagged edge as a magnificent, silent badge of survival. A profound testament to the ancient, deeply clever wisdom of sacrificing the beautiful edge to perfectly save the beating, vital heart. The brilliant, sacrificial edges of those beautifully painted wings face a completely different, entirely physical, and deeply terrifying threat when the heavy, dark skies open. To a creature as incredibly light and deeply fragile as a butterfly, a single falling drop of heavy summer rain is the absolute equivalent of a massive falling bowling ball. A direct, violent strike from a heavy downpour can completely shatter their delicate wings or pace them hopelessly, heavily to the muddy earth. Thus they must become absolute masters of sudden, deeply effective shelter. But if a stray, heavy drop does miraculously find them, their wings possess a profound, microscopic miracle of completely absolute waterproofing. The thousands of overlapping, heavily ridged scales create a deeply textured, highly unyielding surface that traps a microscopic, invisible cushion of air. This creates what scientists beautifully call the lotus effect. The heavy, dangerous water absolutely cannot penetrate or wet the delicate membrane beneath. The massive droplet simply beads up perfectly and rolls completely, instantly and harmlessly away into the dark, leaving the delicate, resting dancer entirely, perfectly, and miraculously dry. The heavy, rhythmic drumming of the clearing storm eventually softens, leaving behind a deeply saturated, beautifully damp forest that offers a completely different, remarkably rich, and deeply earthy sustenance. While we universally picture these fragile dancers gently visiting the bright, sunlit, sweet centres of blooming meadow flowers, many of the most deeply ancient, heavily long-lived species absolutely ignore the blossoms. The magnificent, deeply velvet brown morning cloak, venturing bravely out into the cool, damp air just after the heavy rains, seeks a far more robust, deeply intoxicating nectar, It follows the rich, heavy, fermenting scent of the ancient forest itself, landing vertically on the rough, deeply ridged bark of a towering oak tree. It seeks out the deep, weeping wounds left behind by the rhythmic drilling of woodpeckers or the naturally split, heavy bark of a falling branch. There, it uncoils its long proboscis to drink deeply of the dark, rich, heavily bleeding and completely fermented tree sap. It is a completely silent, deeply grounded feast, sharing the dark, oozing bounty of the ancient wood with the slow, heavy beetles and the quiet, trailing ants. And as the heavy, dark richness of the forest floor settles into your awareness, your own thoughts sink deeply, beautifully into the quiet roots of the earth. You are completely, perfectly grounded, absolutely safe within the deep, dark and heavy ancient woods. Let the steady, slow rhythm of the ancient trees become the rhythm of your own deep, unbroken sleep. The heavy, towering giants of the ancient oak forest eventually give way, melting softly into the low, sprawling, salt-crusted, endlessly wide marshes of the vast open coast. Where the absolute smallest, most impossibly delicate dancer of them all makes its quiet, shimmering, almost entirely invisible home. Amidst the immense, roaring, overwhelming vastness of the crashing ocean and the endless, sweeping, deeply empty sky, flutters the absolute smallest butterfly on the entire planet, the western pygmy blue. It is a creature so unbelievably, impossibly tiny that its entire beautiful wingspan is significantly smaller than a single standard dime. It is a microscopic, breathtakingly perfect jewel, painted in muted, warm, glowing coppers and the absolute softest, most delicate, shimmering pale blues. It dances incredibly close to the ground, navigating the heavy, salt-laden, deeply harsh coastal winds by flying entirely within the tiny, quiet, deeply protected microcurrents that flow just inches above the thick, succulent leaves of the saltbush. To witness this unbelievably tiny, completely weightless spark of life thriving so perfectly, so beautifully against the massive, overwhelming backdrop of the vast roaring sea is to understand the absolute, profound resilience of the completely fragile. A beautiful, deeply comforting reminder that absolute, perfect beauty and profound, unyielding strength can exist in the absolute smallest, most quiet and perfectly still packages. The quiet, completely still resilience of that tiny coastal jewel drifts softly inward, away from the roaring sea, returning us to the deeply humid, heavily shadowed labyrinth of the tropical rainforest. Here, amidst the chaotic, endlessly tangled vines and the vast, unpredictable expanse of the canopy, the elegant postman butterfly practices a deeply structured, incredibly disciplined art of ancient navigation. While many delicate wanderers simply flutter aimlessly, following the random, shifting whispers of the sweet wind, the postman relies on a profound, highly developed, and completely internal map. They practice what is beautifully known as trapline foraging. Every single day, as the golden morning light pierces the heavy canopy, this deeply focused creature flies the exact, identical, deeply memorized route. It visits the very same specific blooming passion flowers in the precise, exact same order, at the exact reliable time of day. It is a completely silent, deeply reliable postal route woven through the chaotic wild, a tiny living pendulum swinging perfectly, rhythmically through the overgrown jungle, bringing a deeply comforting, absolute sense of order and routine to the vast, untamed and endlessly turning forest. The precise, deeply memorized, invisible map of the postman's daily flight is painted entirely in the mind, but the jungle holds other, breathtaking maps painted purely, miraculously in the architecture of light itself. As the magnificent emerald swallowtail glides gracefully through the heavily dappled, shifting sunbeams of Southeast Asia, its broad, sweeping wings flash with a completely blinding, deeply radiant and impossible green. Yet, If you were to look closely, deeply into the microscopic fabric of those radiant wings, you would find absolutely no green pigment whatsoever. The scales covering their delicate canvas are miraculously shaped like incredibly tiny, perfectly concave microscopic bowls. The very bottom of each microscopic basin is perfectly designed to reflect a brilliant, pure golden yellow, while the steep, curving microscopic sides of the bowl reflect a deep, oceanic blue. When the bright, warm sunlight strikes these millions of tiny empty bowls, the yellow and the blue light completely, flawlessly mix in the space just above the wing, creating the breathtaking optical illusion of a solid, shimmering emerald. It is a completely invisible, microscopic alchemy of light, painting the forest with a colour that does not physically truly exist on the wing at all. The shifting, shimmering, deeply complex illusion of that radiant emerald eventually settles, melting softly into the heavy, deeply still and completely earthy browns of the ancient forest floor. Where the art of illusion requires not just a beautiful painting, but a deeply committed, flawless physical performance. We have marvelled at the breathtaking deadleaf butterfly, its tightly closed wings perfectly mirroring the dry, decaying, fungal-spotted remnants of autumn. But to completely, flawlessly deceive the sharpest, most hungry eyes of the canopy, it must do more than simply look like a leaf. It must become the leaf entirely. When a sudden, sweeping gust of the evening wind rushes through the heavy branches, stirring the true dead leaves into a chaotic, rustling dance, this magnificent creature absolutely does not cling rigidly to its branch in fear. Instead, it deliberately, beautifully, and rhythmically relaxes its grip. It allows its entire delicate body to sway perfectly, completely randomly side to side, perfectly matching the exact erratic, deeply natural swinging motion of a dead leaf hanging by a single failing thread. It is an absolute breathtaking masterpiece of physical acting. A deeply surrendered performance to the wind, ensuring its total, complete disappearance into the breathing, moving tapestry of the wild. And as you watch this gentle, rhythmic, completely surrendered swaying, you can feel your own heavy body swaying softly, deeply into sleep. The deep, natural rhythm of the wind is gently, beautifully rocking your thoughts, carrying away all the rigid, heavy control of the waking day. You're yielding perfectly to the calm, drifting effortlessly, deeply into a space of pure golden rest. This pure golden rest finds its absolute most literal breathtaking expression within the deeply quiet, utterly motionless sanctuary of the hanging pupa. For centuries, naturalists and quiet observers of the wild marvelled at the small, hardened casings left behind by the transforming caterpillars, specifically noting the completely breathtaking, heavily metallic flecks that adorned their smooth, jade-like surfaces. These spots gleamed so brightly, so perfectly in the dappled sunlight, they appeared to be crafted from pure, unyielding, precious metal. It is exactly from this deeply beautiful, mirror-like illusion that we derive the very word chrysalis, born directly from the ancient whispering Greek word chrysos, which means simply and beautifully gold. Yet this is not true metal. It is another profound, microscopic miracle of pure light, layers of clear, watery chitin structured so perfectly they act as a flawless, brilliant mirror. It is a deeply poetic, profoundly beautiful reminder that the true, ultimate treasure of the natural world is not a heavy metal pulled from the dark earth, but the completely silent, deeply transforming living miracle held safely, quietly within. The quiet, golden promise held within that sleeping jewel eventually, inevitably requires a deeply patient, incredibly slow, and profoundly heavy awakening. In the deep, intensely humid, cloud-draped rainforests of New Guinea, the absolute largest butterfly on Earth, the Goliath birdwing, prepares to finally enter the open sky. but a creature of such massive, sweeping, breathtaking proportions, with wings that can completely cover a human face, absolutely cannot rush its entrance into the world. When it finally, powerfully cracks the thick, heavy shell of its massive chrysalis, it steps out into a completely vulnerable, deeply unhurried state. It absolutely requires the thick, heavy, deeply saturated moisture of the jungle air to prevent its massive, newly formed wings from drying too quickly. It will hang completely, utterly motionless for hours upon hours, slowly, rhythmically and powerfully pumping the heavy fluid through the immense branching network of its veins. It is a deeply magnificent lesson in absolute, unwavering patience, waiting perfectly still, completely trusting the slow, heavy passage of time, refusing to rush the profound, completely necessary process of its own massive unfolding. This unhurried, deeply patient unfolding of the giant wings is beautifully, quietly echoed in the absolute fragile patience of a deeply microscopic, completely singular bond. In the quiet, sun-drenched, sandy clearings of the North American pine barrens flutters the exquisite, incredibly tiny Kana blue butterfly. Its entire, completely beautiful existence is perfectly, incredibly, and absolutely tethered to a single, specific plant, the wild blue lupine. The tiny, deeply fragile mother will absolutely refuse to lay her precious eggs on any other leaf in the entire vast forest. The soft, creeping caterpillars are biologically entirely incapable of digesting any other foliage. Their lives are a perfect, completely unbroken, incredibly delicate lock and key. It is a story of absolute, profound devotion to a singular source of life, a deeply poignant, beautifully fragile reminder of how incredibly interwoven and perfectly, silently dependent the vast, breathing natural world truly is. A delicate thread of pure blue tied perfectly, forever, to a single, blooming spire of purple. The deep, unbroken, entirely singular bond between a fragile wing and a specific flower eventually miraculously blossoms into a vast, breathtaking and deeply communal gathering. Deep within the immense, endlessly winding river systems of the Amazon, the damp, mineral-rich mud banks occasionally completely disappear beneath a sudden, vast, violently shimmering carpet of pure, unbroken colour. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of brilliant yellow, deep orange and pale green butterflies gather so closely, so incredibly tightly together that not a single inch of the dark earth is visible. This breathtaking, completely silent, wildly fluttering sea of colour is almost entirely composed of males. They are engaged in the deeply necessary, completely communal act of mud puddling, plunging their long, delicate proboscises deep into the wet earth. They are drawing up the heavy grounding salts and the vital ancient minerals, not for themselves, but to perfectly generously pack into the beautiful, life-giving nuptial gifts they will soon present to the females. It is a vast, completely silent brotherhood of provision, a shimmering golden ocean of tiny creatures working peacefully together to perfectly secure the deep, unseen future of their entire kind. Let the quiet, shimmering, incredibly peaceful stillness of this vast golden gathering settle deeply over your own mind. Feel the deep communal safety of this completely undisturbed natural rhythm. Your thoughts are gathering peacefully, quietly, without any frantic effort, drawing up pure, deeply calming rest. You are perfectly anchored in this moment, beautifully, completely safe. This profound, completely grounded safety on the wet earth perfectly prepares them to navigate the absolute highest, most deeply confusing and entirely pathless expanses of the open sky. We know they can brilliantly, flawlessly read the exact golden angle of the bright sun to cross the vast open oceans. But what happens when the heavy, dark, completely unbroken clouds roll in and the golden face of the sun is completely, entirely hidden from the world. They absolutely do not falter, and they absolutely do not become lost. The butterfly's massive, incredibly complex compound eyes possess the miraculous, deeply profound ability to see polarized light. Even when the sky is a flat, uniform, completely featureless blanket of heavy grey, the light filtering through the clouds retains a deeply specific, completely invisible geometric alignment. The butterfly sees this hidden, glowing, geometric grid stretching beautifully across the entire dome of the sky. They follow a deep, invisible highway of organized light, navigating perfectly, entirely flawlessly through the absolute thickest, darkest gloom, guided by a deeply profound, completely hidden order that is always beautifully present just above the clouds. The invisible, deeply structured, perfectly ordered paths of light in the vast sky are beautifully, miraculously mirrored by the shifting, deeply physical, and entirely private light trapped perfectly within their wings. We have marvelled at the structural, shimmering colours of the magnificent morpho and the radiant emerald, but this microscopic architecture holds one final, completely mesmerising, deeply intimate secret. It is a phenomenon known to science as goniochromism, meaning the colour completely entirely changes depending on the exact specific angle of the observer. If a hunting bird looks down from above, it may see nothing but a dull, deeply camouflaged, completely uninteresting brown. But to a mate, positioned at the absolute precise, mathematically perfect angle directly below, those exact same wings flash with a blinding, deeply radiant, impossible magenta, or a deeply glowing, intense gold. It is a completely private, deeply secret language of pure light. A breathtaking, beautiful message that is only ever truly revealed to the one, exact, perfect observer who is standing in the absolute right place at the absolute right time. The endless, shifting, completely mesmerizing dance of this private, radiant colour eventually beautifully seeks the deep, monochromatic, utterly silent quiet of the deepest winter woods. When the vibrant, blooming warmth of the summer finally fades, the delicate, uniquely shaped brimstone butterfly does not perish, and it absolutely does not flee across the vast, rolling continents. Instead, it seeks out the dense, thick, heavily intertwined sanctuary of the evergreen English ivy. With its uniquely angled, pale yellow-green wings clamped tightly, firmly shut, it becomes completely, entirely indistinguishable from a small, pale, sleeping leaf. Here, wrapped perfectly in the deep, dark, freezing shadows, it enters an absolute, profound state of completely suspended animation. It will sleep without moving, without eating, without making a single tiny sound for incredibly long, freezing months. Due to this profound, incredibly deep, masterfully patient sleep, the delicate brimstone can live for an astonishing 13 months, an absolutely unprecedented, breathtakingly long lifespan for such a fragile creature. It is the ultimate, profound expression of absolute, perfect stillness. A beautiful, sleeping testament that sometimes the absolute greatest, longest, and most deeply rewarding journey is simply to stay perfectly, beautifully still and wait for the warm golden sun to finally gently return. The deep, suspended stillness of that winter sleep leads us finally to the absolute most profound, whispered secret of their entire, remarkable existence. The beautiful hidden truth of the imago. When a fragile butterfly finally triumphantly emerges from its hardened chrysalis, completely shedding its watery past, biologists refer to this ultimate winged form as the imago. It is a beautiful, deeply poetic word, rooted perfectly in the ancient Latin for image or reflection. But within the quiet, unfolding story of biology, it signifies something far more breathtaking and deeply, profoundly freeing. Once they take to the wide, open sky, they will absolutely, definitively never grow again. A tiny, fluttering wanderer does not slowly grow into a massive, sweeping giant of the canopy. It arrives into the bright light completely, entirely, and perfectly finished. Every single ounce of painful, stretching growth, every heavy, earthbound, consuming struggle, every quiet, dissolving moment in the absolute dark of the pupa has been completely, finally exhausted. They have reached their absolute, perfect, undeniable peak of being. The imago stage is no longer about the exhausting labour of becoming. It is purely, beautifully, and entirely about the simple grace of being. They exist in a state of ultimate, profound completion. They absolutely do not need to acquire more, to build more, or to constantly strive to change the beautiful shape of who they are. Their only remaining magnificent purpose is to drift effortlessly through the warm golden light, to drink the sweet offered nectar of the present, passing moment, and to share their stunning, radiant beauty with the vast, endlessly turning world. It is the absolute highest, most deeply peaceful state of natural breathing existence. A beautiful, flying testament that after all the heavy, necessary labour of deep transformation, there comes a time when the work is simply, perfectly done, and you are finally, beautifully allowed to just exist, perfectly whole, exactly as you are, mirroring the pure beauty of the sunlit earth. And as this final, beautiful truth settles so softly, so perfectly into the deepest, quietest, most hidden rooms of your mind, you too can fully, completely embrace the profound peace of the imago. You have absolutely done enough today. You have grown enough, thought enough, and laboured enough through the bright, heavy, demanding hours of the waking world. Right here, in this quiet, deeply shadowed, entirely safe space, there is absolutely nothing left to build. Absolutely nothing left to fix or solve or change. Notice how incredibly heavy your breathing has become, how profoundly slow, how perfectly, beautifully rhythmic. The cool air moves gently in, and the warm air sweeps softly out, a slow, continuous, deeply soothing tide that gently washes away the very last lingering, fragile fragments of the day. Your mind is a vast, deeply quiet meadow now, bathed completely in the soft, silver cooling light of the resting moon. The frantic, buzzing, rapid thoughts of the afternoon have all completely folded their wings, hanging entirely still, resting safely, securely beneath the heavy, protecting, dark leaves of your deep subconscious. The air is delightfully cool. The ancient earth is profoundly silent. Every single, tiny muscle in your body has surrendered completely, beautifully to the heavy, comforting, magnetic pull of the earth far below you. You are perfectly, entirely anchored. Yet you feel completely weightless, floating safely on a deep, dark, velvet river of absolute, unbroken tranquility. It is time to let go of the bright light, to let go of the vibrant, shifting colours. Let the shimmering velvet wings fade softly, peacefully into the beautiful, welcoming, heavy dark. There is no more need to watch, no more need to listen. There is only the slow, steady, deeply comforting rhythm of your own peaceful heart, beating in perfect, flawless time with the silent, sleeping, turning world, drifting deeper and beautifully deeper into the absolute, perfect, undisturbed stillness of the night, completely unburdened, completely at peace. And now 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.